Hey everybody, how's it going? It is April 5th, 2023. It's the RambleCast, and we have an excellent show. It's what we do. I have a Corbin here with me,
Hello.
and I'm Cody. Hey Austin, and yes, terrible news about Bob Lee. Um, the I believe it was former CEO and founder of Square. Um, so yeah, terrible news. He was murdered in San Francisco area, um, or well, in the city of San Francisco, and apparently it sounds like it was a mugging. So yeah, that's that's awful. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and I've seen a lot of obviously I've seen a lot of people just with a mix of sadly a lot of bad takes because there are terrible people out there who love to turn everything like this into some sort of political statement. But I've also seen a lot of people who obviously have some sympathetic comments. But I've also seen, and I I think it bears mentioning this. I've also seen a few people bringing up his work, and I want to give him credit for this too. He was he was responsible for a lot of the open source software that came out of Square. And when I say responsible, I don't mean necessarily that he wrote it, but he encouraged the company to do a lot of open source work. He pushed pretty hard for a lot of it to be shared. Obviously, they didn't necessarily share like business secrets or anything like that, but for obvious reasons. But anyone who follows Jake Wharton, um, really well known Android developer who is very well known for a lot of open source software. Uh, it, Bob basically encouraged and supported Jake open sourcing tons of that stuff. So if you've ever heard of things like Dagger, which it's occurring to me that that name is incredibly unfortunate at this moment. But yeah, if you've heard of Dagger or the rest of the projects are escaping my mind at the moment, but yeah, so many of the things that came out of Square that are just massive, hugely popular Android libraries. Uh, a lot of that, in at least in part, is owed to Bob Lee. So, yeah, he'll be missed. Hey Diablo, how's it going? Corbin, any thoughts, words, or move on?
I have no thoughts. Obviously, uh, that's not a good way to go.
True.
Feels pretty bad.
Yep.
So yeah. So where do we want to start? Because there's a lot of stuff.
Okay, so
Uh, and
I'm
also, I apologize in advance. I'm very pollen uh, congested right now. So doing my best.
yep. The hay fever is coming out strong in opposition to Corbin. Um, well, do we just because I have this tab up, Western Digital?
Sure. Um, yeah. So on back on Sunday, Western Digital got hacked, and you might be thinking, Western Digital, don't they make like what's there to hack? Well, this time it was their corporate infrastructure, and as a that they haven't really said what specifically got attacked. I think they're still trying to figure that out. But as a precaution, they are supposedly upgrading the security of their software services, which means that all of their services have been down since Sunday. In fact, if you go to the Western Digital status page, all of there's a link in that Bleeping Computer article where it says the service status page notes. But yeah, like all their everything's red, all of it's down. Their last update was April 3rd. It's now the 5th. So great job, guys. Keep it up. And this is not surprising at all if you know much about Western Digital. Although they're switching it up this time because this time their corporate infrastructure got hacked, and like their central service to some extent. We don't know to what extent, but usually it's all of their consumer hardware getting hacked. So Western Digital has a long and proud history of really terrible security practices with their mostly their network attached storage products. So obviously, if you're like me and the most you bought from them is like an internal SSD, you're fine. You're good.
Well, internal or just external storage drives.
Yeah.
Anything that doesn't
Just a
connect to a
drive.
network directly. Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
I think that's what almost everyone actually has.
Yeah, they make good drives. Just the drives. Don't buy anything else from them. Don't do it.
I'm sure they
like,
make.
they're not.
Actually, do they make any other? I know they make other products. I'm looking this up.
All I'm aware from them is like their NAS stuff, and I know they make a lot of flash storage stuff because they bought someone a while ago, and that's where all their SSDs come from. I forget who they purchased. Because they used to just be like.
See, I thought it was the other way around. I thought someone bought Western Digital.
Someone bought Western Digital, maybe.
I thought it was like SanDisk or something. Maybe I have that the other way around.
They own SanDisk.
Okay, so Western Digital bought SanDisk. That must be it.
That's who I'm thinking of. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, so they make like a lot of drives, and they just had constant security issues with those drives. They've had issues where there's like multiple ways of hackers gaining access to someone's storage and either accessing it or wiping it remotely. A couple of years ago, I think there was one story where a bunch of people woke up and all their files were missing because someone broke into their NAS remotely and deleted all their files. I'm sure that's really fun to deal with. And there's been a bunch of other cases of like something being disclosed to them and them being very slow to fix it or not fixing certain models that are too old. So not great.
So what you're saying is that all their cloud data went up in vapor?
Yes.
I'm not proud of that. I'm not proud of that at all. But it had to be said. So it's kind of funny. I went to just the Western Digital site, hit products, and then I figured I'd look at some of the other products listed. Click on the Bayou's gaming page, and it's just straight up, "We'll be back soon. We apologize." Like, their product pages are broken. This is real bad. Hey, Carson, how's it going?
Hello, Carson.
But yeah,
I mean, if I search Western Digital on Amazon, it's just internal drives and like external drives in their NAS products. I don't see anything else they really make. So
okay, so there are a few individual pages on their site that are still up, but it seems like a lot of the things that might be generated in any capacity or any of the product pages, those all seem to be showing as down, which is really a bad sign.
Yeah. Not good. Please stop buying anything from Western Digital that is not just a drive. They're pretty good at the drives. Don't do anything else.
I will marginally throw a bit, just a little bit of a, like I don't want to, I don't want it to sound like I'm simping or defending them, but I will say if you're willing to put a NAS on your home network and completely block it off from the internet, like it can be a NAS on your home network and you should be fine.
Sure.
Make sure it cannot touch the internet in any way, shape, or form. Like maybe open ports long enough so that you can download updates. Other than that, just no.
Yeah, I mean I one of the incidents from a few years ago was one where like even if someone had turned off all of the internet features, like they still got hacked because it's still connected to the internet. So yeah, I don't know like what the best solution there is. I know honestly a lot of routers, especially the gaming ones, have USB ports and you can just attach whatever kind of drive you want. But also I don't really know if all those routers are super secure either.
Yeah, so, I was gonna say I don't have a ton of faith there.
Just die. That's the best advice in the digital privacy is just accept it.
Just unplug everything.
Don't buy Western Digital,
go out in nature and never come back. That's Corbin's advice.
And touch grass.
Touch grass. Yeah, so
I remember when Apple made network hardware that you could make a NAS with back in the olden days.
They did.
I remember my house. We had I think it was the Airport Extreme, the one that was like vaguely cone shaped.
Oh.
That before the one that looked like a tall Mac Mini, there was the cone, like the rounded cone shaped one. And we also had the Airport. I don't know. I forget what it was called, but it was like the Airport extender thing that looked like just the power brick for like a MacBook. But it didn't have like any cables or anything. It's just like a white block that plugged into the wall, and it had a audio jack on it, so you could plug up speakers and use that for iTunes AirPlay, or whatever AirPlay was called back then. It was like 2006, maybe. It's a long time ago.
So I found...
Yeah, Apple, you should make some network hardware again.
I found the thing. Yeah, that's a terrible shape for a device.
It was very weird.
Yeah, I only ever had the Airport Extremes that were shaped like Mac Minis. And I actually still have two of those.
I think we upgraded to that at some point. I remember.
So
yeah, there it is.
Yeah. I'm actually going to argue I don't think Apple should make networking hardware. Not that they did a bad job of it. It was decent. But the companion app was strictly a iOS only companion app for a long time. They finally did make one for macOS, and it was not very good. Actually, it was pretty bad. So yeah, I'm gonna hold to the belief that they should really never ever make hardware again, because I don't look. I've got enough Macs here and even a couple iOS devices. I don't want to rely on those if I need to fix things on the network. Just saying.
So yeah, good job, Western Digital. Keep it up.
Yes, keep it up. You're making it easy for people to write articles about how bad you're doing. It's kind of like politicians make it easy for comedians kind of argument.
I mean, I did appreciate that happened over the weekend, and by the time I was able to get to it, I think on Tuesday, it was still down. So, thanks for giving me something to write about that didn't immediately become irrelevant. That's always fun.
What's concerning is the fact that this is still ongoing. Like, is this what instant Dave?
I'm looking at their status page right now. It's all good.
Yeah, this particular article was just from Monday. I don't know what day it started, but
yeah.
I mean, they're. Oh, okay. It was identified
on.
Wait, what?
Yeah, it was like early Monday morning, I think. Let me see. They linked to their press release, which was published on the 3rd, which was Monday at 2:06 a.m. Eastern time. So.
Yeah, but that's the press release. I mean, when this actually happened is a different story. So
the press release says on March 26th.
Yeah.
They identified a security incident, and then I guess everything went down on that Monday or Sunday because they need to make upgrades. So again, good job, everyone.
Yeah, but all things considered, we're now at if you're doing the math correctly, like we're now at 10 to 11 days since things went wrong. 10 to 11 days, and they still don't have their crap back together yet. This is bad.
Not good. Not good. Don't do that.
So yeah, I have a funny feeling this is something that may actually convince people to maybe not totally rely on Western Digital ever again. Might even kind of kill their Cloud Home or MyCloud. I think it's called MyCloud. Might even kill MyCloud as a product line, just because it will be incredibly unpopular. Also, you know what I haven't heard, and I don't know, maybe I'm just not looking in the right places, but I haven't heard companies like Synology or QNAP or who was the other one? I was just talking about them. Oh, TerraMaster. I haven't heard any of those companies dunking, which honestly is kind of surprising.
Yeah, this is the time for Synology to be like, hey guys, we have a sale right now. If you want to come buy our things, guess what's working, guys? All of our shit. Let's go.
Yup. And yeah, the only reason I can think of for not dunking, and this would be a good reason, you know that as soon as you dunk, someone out there's gonna be like, oh no, you guys can't brag either, and all of a sudden their stuff's gonna go down too.
All the skeletons in the closets are coming out.
Yup. Not gonna lie, part of me is even thinking maybe I should take my NAS completely offline for a little while just to be safe.
Yeah. So yeah, that was a fun thing. I can talk about the Microsoft thing real quick because that's nice and easy, quick and easy.
Okay, I assume you're talking about the dock.
The dock, yeah.
And then we'll move over to the Windows thing.
Cool.
Okay, go for it.
So, yeah. So this was yesterday. It got leaked, I think a day or two before, but Microsoft has released a new Microsoft Surface dock. So if you're completely unfamiliar with this, most of Microsoft's Surface laptops and tablets have a proprietary port on them, which is magnetic, and it does power and data. So how it works is that when you buy your Surface thing, it comes with the power cable for this that works like MagSafe. But the main reason it exists is because they have been selling docks that plug into this and give you like all the I/O. So you can take your Surface Pro, use it wherever you want, and then dock it on your desk, and it becomes a full computer with all the, got your keyboard and display and stuff running through it. And that was helpful in like 2016, 2017, whenever they introduced this. It wasn't on the first Surface tablets, but it was on some of the early ones. I don't know if it was on the Pro 2 or the Pro 3 was the first one, but it's been there for a while. But more recently, it's not been as helpful because now we have Thunderbolt and USB hubs that work most of the time pretty well. And when you look at all of Microsoft's recent laptops and tablets, they all have like 1 or 2 USB ports because a lot of the I/O is being taken up by the Surface connector. So now that Microsoft has released this new dock, which is just a normal Thunderbolt dock, but presumably maybe more well made than some of the other Thunderbolt docks. I mean, it's a Thunderbolt dock, so it might just spontaneously crap out. You never know. But this is entirely Thunderbolt, doesn't use the Surface connector at all, which probably means that Microsoft's future Surface products won't have that connector either. Maybe they'll do it like in phases. So, you buy a new tablet, you don't have to immediately get rid of your dock you paid $200 for a couple months ago, because Microsoft was charging an arm and a leg for those docks. Those are so expensive. So I'm happy about that because I mostly liked my Surface Laptop 5 that I had for a couple months before I traded it for a MacBook Air. As far as Windows PCs goes, like I'm not going to blame the laptop for the inefficiency of x86 architecture on Windows at this point. But the laptop itself was mostly fine, except it only had like 2 USB ports because it had the Surface connector, and I guess that was taking up like too many of the I/O lanes or whatever. So I just had this thing where like as soon as I needed more than my power connected and like one thing, I need to go grab a hub. I mean, it's the same thing that like Apple went through with some of the MacBook Airs and the MacBook Pros, where they had like 1 or 2 ports and you just need to hub everything up. So hopefully Surface connector is dead because it doesn't serve as much of a purpose anymore, except it was still nice to have something similar to MagSafe. If they can do what Apple does, where literally just make it power and save all the data for the USB and Thunderbolt ports, that'd be cool.
So I will firmly agree. I think they should keep the port there if they can in any capacity, just so it remains compatible with any existing hardware that like companies probably bought, because that's naturally where a lot of this stuff kind of goes into use. Like regular people usually don't buy this stuff, but it's not that uncommon for IT departments to be like, okay, well, we'll buy the laptops. Oh, and everyone needs this accessory cable or this special dock or whatever else. So they buy a crap load of those. Logically, I think they'll probably want to keep the port around another generation or 2 for that stuff. Outside of that, I tend to agree. Kill it with fire. Proprietary ports. I get it. I understand why a lot of people want to keep them around, but that particular port was never that good. It was awkward. It was kind of a pain to use. It broke a little too easily. And granted, I had a lot of bad experiences with my Surface Book anyway, but I'm in favor of kind of getting rid of those things.
And this isn't even like a lightning situation where Microsoft was like opening up for other companies to use. I don't think they let anyone else use this. So like, as far as I know, I don't remember there being like any third-party, chargers or docks that use this. So anyway, that's fun. Looks like a nice dock. If I was trying to go the one computer life, I would buy a dock like this, but
Strictly
not doing that
speaking,
at
I
the
don't think
moment.
there's really much preventing you from buying a dock like this, even now. Is there a reason why this dock
No,
wouldn't
I
work with
just
a
don't.
MacBook? I
It should. They don't. They didn't like. I tried looking in the description, and they mostly just mentioned like specifically which Surface models it works with, because it doesn't work with all of them, because some of them are too old to have Thunderbolt 4 or whatever. But I imagine this should work fine, because like even the iPad works with a lot of Thunderbolt docks. At least the Pro that has like the actual Thunderbolt port. So
yeah,
yeah, hopefully.
I'm maintaining my belief that this probably will plug into any MacBook Pro, in a USB-C world. It should plug
Yeah,
into
I
any
mean,
of them
it
and work
should.
probably just fine. I suppose if maybe,
Yeah.
I think there were a few of the early MacBooks that did not have Thunderbolt 4, so maybe there's a compatibility issue there, but outside of that, I mean, it should work, and I would think it would work even with lower Thunderbolt versions. It just wouldn't be as fast. Like, some ports might not perform very well. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this stuff is really the Thunderbolt and USB-C like docking and pass-through stuff is really cool when it works.
When it works.
Like I have when it works. Like I have a Lenovo portable monitor that I got for when I need to like work with my laptop somewhere for a while, because it is kind of difficult to do that on one 13-inch monitor for a while, depending on what I'm doing. And it's entirely USB-C and it has pass-through. So what I can do is just plug my power cable into the monitor and then plug my monitor into the laptop, and it just fully, keeps the laptop charged, runs the monitor from the laptop. It's great. I mean, I did live the Surface life. When I was in high school, I did buy a used Surface Pro. I don't know if it was a Pro 2 or Pro 3, but I bought that tablet with the keyboard attachment so I could use it as a laptop, and I had the dock. So I would, take my Surface to school with me, play Civilization 5 in class when I was supposed to be paying attention, and take it home and put it in the dock, and I had my full desktop computer. And that computer was equally bad at everything it tried to do. It was a heavy tablet that didn't have great battery life, and it wasn't a good laptop because it was flimsy, because it had a just a keyboard cover. It didn't like sit on my lap like a laptop, and wasn't a very powerful desktop computer because it had a shitty mobile Intel chip in it. But it was better than anything else I had before then, and it was still cool for a while. And then I was like, I need to build a PC now.
Sounds about right.
Curry Mermaid said Windows 8. Yeah, I think it shipped with 8.1. I think, because I do have pictures of using it with like the full screen Surface Mini that went away with 10. I don't think it was 8.0. I think it was 8.1, but I'm not sure. That was a while ago.
Makes sense. So, speaking of Windows, oh, by the way, let's see, do I have any thoughts on this? I don't know. Again, like, just in favor of killing the old port. I can't really think of much else to say.
More standardized stuff, please.
Yeah. So anyway, speaking of Windows, we have a report coming from Windows Central, or at least I think that was a source. Maybe I don't remember who they were sourcing, maybe beyond that, but there is a.
You should toss me the link, sir.
I'll paste it into chat.
Oops. Thank you. Oh, there's a fly in my face.
That's weird. I copied
that's
one.
That's not the link.
It is definitely not the link. There we go.
It's not a URL. Okay, there we go. Excellent.
Okay, so yeah, we've got we got this. I'm quickly looking. I don't see any sign that there was a specific source to this. Anyway, it is a report claiming that Microsoft is already making plans for, and one would assume, developing Windows 12. Nothing too crazy about that, even though Windows 11 is not that. I mean, it's not exactly fresh out of the gate, but I wouldn't say it's that old either. It felt like Windows 10 lasted a pretty long time, and Windows 11, it seems like maybe they're kind of gonna rush to get past it, which I kind of understand, because Windows 11 does not have the most wonderful of transition reputations.
Yeah, I mean, Windows 10 stuck around for a while because Microsoft was trying to stick to this self-imposed thing where they're like, this is the last Windows version. Yeah. We're just going to do minor updates from here on out. And then they realized that like the way to make people care about your product when you make software is to put new versions on it every once in a while.
Yeah.
And they were already working on a really big update for Windows 10, and they were like, all right, slap a new version on there. I think it's time. So I think that now that they've broken that mold, it wouldn't surprise me if we get new major Windows releases like, 2 to 3 years. I don't see them ever doing like the yearly thing Apple does, just because even their minor updates take like 6 months to fully roll out to everyone, because every time they start, there's like some bug where it's like, oh, if you have this like Intel chipset from 2014, it just will wipe your computer if you install this, so we need to halt the update for those people until we fix this. And that happens every time. So.
Yeah, well, and plus the business rollout just invariably is always slow. And it probably should be. I mean, that's fine, but yeah. And plus, I think Microsoft very obviously did not. They weren't very successful with rolling out updates that were even fairly major updates when the way everyone recognized them was by a build number that was like 4 digits? I think. Yeah, and I don't know. Anyway, they were giving out build numbers as their versions, and I just remember everyone sharing those around. And it's like, yeah, no, this is horrible. No one should be referring to their operating system by a build number.
Oh yeah, they completely messed it up. It was either the build numbers or they would say something like fall 2018 update.
Well, for a long time,
or they tried to.
It was just the fall update, which I remember at some point it was like spring and people were saying, hey, did you get the fall update yet? And it's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Like, are you talking about like a version that's coming up later this year that you're like beta testing? Or are you talking about last year's fall update? And they were always talking about last year's fall update. It's like, no, this is so bad.
Yeah. And then they kept trying to give like each update like a name, but then they kept using like they had like 3 updates that were all called the creators update. And I was like, okay guys, you gotta do something else here. Yes, it was really bad. They're bad at that. So
reportedly one of the big changes, I mean, this title mentions AI, which faster updates and better security. What it doesn't really discuss too closely until you get into the article is that one of the changes that they're apparently going to make is finally splitting the OS from what is effectively user data. This, by the way, as anyone who has ever used any other platform, this is normal. It's really only Windows that still has this thing where you just have your drive and one of the folders is like your Windows OS, and then all of your other data can be just strewn about in the same folders. So apparently they're aiming to basically kind of split it off so that it would be a separate partition for the OS, and their updates would just target that. And then obviously any user space stuff, even things that are meant to work with the kernel to whatever extent, those would be installed but have a way to kind of act as if they're living in the same space. Which, this is effectively what, again, everybody else does in some capacity or another. Obviously, Mac OS, you still have folders living in the same kind of alongside, but it's split off into separate folders. And within the Unix file system paradigm, that's actually pretty compatible with having partitions. Android, again, like it shows up as being all put together, but it is definitely separate partitions. iOS, I don't even know, but I'm sure it's separate partitions. It is a better way of doing things. It is just better. So apparently, about a decade late, Microsoft is jumping on board.
Yeah, and this article does mention that supposedly this would split the OS. Like the OS itself would also be in multiple partitions, so they could do like Android's AB OS updates, where it's like, oh, did the Windows update screw up your PC? Because it still happens sometimes. Great, click this button, you're back to where you were. Good job. And we'll send this bug report over to Microsoft, which might get fixed, maybe not. And by the way, we'll push the update again too tomorrow. But yeah, so that's really cool. The other thing in this article is that they are testing. Where is it? So this article mentions that. So I'm trying to find where it is. This is kind of long and covers a lot of ground. Okay, yeah. So it eventually gets to the other point, which is that this framework could allow Microsoft to make a far more stripped down version of Windows, which they would put on devices competing with like Chromebooks. This specifically, it says a version of Windows that only runs Edge, web apps, Android apps via Project Latte, and Office apps designed for low-end education PCs is already in early testing internally, and is roughly 60 to 75% smaller than Windows 11 SE. Which is interesting, but makes me wonder, like, what this came up in the How to Geek Slack. I got linked, and we don't like usually write about like rumors like this, so it was mostly just us talking about it. And I do wonder, like, how much do they strip out to get it like that? Like, I don't know, is there that much application bloat in Windows? Because like the other thing here is this sounds a lot like Windows 10X, but the goal there, which again I said probably on this on a very old RambleCast back when it was still going to happen, that I really like the idea of Windows 10X, but that was back when there was a clear divide at Microsoft between universal Windows apps that were like this completely different architecture that were already sandboxed and function differently, and this old like Win32 thing. But like Microsoft is completely done with universal Windows apps, and everything in Windows 11 has been taking like their more modern code base and how they want to build things and updating all the Win32 toolkits. So like, you know, the new Office apps like look pretty nice, but they're like the new Windows Explorer, like they finally updated Windows Explorer because they stopped trying to make a universal app version, and they just made a new UI toolkit with all their new stuff, and they updated it to that. So now that it's like, again, all backported into the same thing, I don't know what they're ripping out. Is it just like, I don't know. I'm interested to see what they do, because like if if all you need to do is run web apps, then yeah, like you could make a very stripped down version of Windows. But if you need Windows that can run Edge, which is a big boy app, and Office apps, and you need an Android VM in there too, that's I mean, I'm sure you can strip out a lot of stuff from Windows, but it's kind of surprising to me that it would be 75% smaller than what they're shipping now.
Okay, I can see a lot of ways that makes sense. Everything from just to name a couple of basic things, you could remove so much legacy stuff. For example, at least last I heard, I guess technically I don't know this to be true, but last I heard, you can still run VB6 apps on Windows. You might have to throw on like the old VB6 runtime, but like they still support the ability to do this. And the same is true for a lot of old APIs that they just don't need to be there anymore. Or rather, for most people, they don't need to be there. So, I mean, it's hard to imagine that it really is 75% of the OS is just old legacy stuff no one's using.
Yeah.
But it could be. And consider, like, we've heard, I forget where this is, but you pointed this out a few times. Think about, like, all the old versions of dialogues. They still have support for a bunch of old dialogues, purely for the reason that a lot of old companies, or not old companies, but I guess that's true too, but a lot of companies have like either automated scripts that target a specific version of a dialogue, or they have like in their documentation they tell people how to do a certain thing, so they've got screenshots and all of that stuff references a specific version of some dialogue, and so they still have built into Windows all of these old like file open dialogues that shouldn't exist anymore. They just don't have a reason to be around. That kind of thing, it's not that each of these individually takes a lot of space or need to be consuming much, but taken as a whole, like as you scoop out all of these things, I could see it starting to add up. Like, all of those legacy dialogues, all of the legacy APIs, all of the legacy runtimes, you add all that stuff up, put it all together, and yeah, that would add up to a really sizable amount.
Yeah, I mean, because usually the issue with Windows is like, yeah, they've got a bunch of old APIs in there, but more so it's like applications bundling their own runtimes. So like you have these huge like Electron apps because you have like 15 copies of Chromium on your computer, or you have every app has their own, Visual Basic runtime installed. So I guess maybe it adds up there. I could see that. Hoopy said there's so many features that are turned off by default just in case you need SMB1 or to run Windows 95 apps.
Yep.
Yeah, they do have that like optional features dialog. A lot of that did get not installed by default on 11, though. But yeah, I'm sure there's still a lot of stuff in there. You can and download that.
But even like you just said, it may not be installed by default, but the thing is they also still probably have like a interface there or hooks for a lot of those things to be installed. And so even if they don't install like the actual large package that does this, they might still be making a lot of compromises and including API endpoints that they might not even need. They could very possibly strip a lot of that stuff out and just streamline the code, at which point, again, like they could be making this a lot smoother, a lot smaller. At which point, Windows would not seem like a bloated mess. Though the counterpoint is, there's a whole I'll tell you, there's so much stuff for app developers. They might be building an app that works 95% on all new stuff, but then lo and behold, there's some old thing that they have to use like an old API to do, at which point they need some old feature. I mean, that's literally what ruined whatever it was called, the first time that they tried streamlining Windows.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. The it was someone said 10S. I think it was S mode.
Sure.
Well, not. Oh, yeah, S mode was the thing where it was just normal Windows, but they didn't let you install from outside the Microsoft Store by default. I don't think it was
I'm talking
really...
about specifically the thing that was just Metro UI, nothing else, on basically just tablets. That, and I feel like that was before that preceded Windows 10. Maybe it didn't, but I would have sworn it did. But it was definitely what came out on the very original Surface tablets.
Oh, fuck. Yeah, it was the ARM version of Windows.
Yeah, well, that too. Though,
yeah,
were the originals ARM? I don't think they were.
Yeah, yeah. The original Surface was ARM. Okay. And then they made the Pro, which was x86.
Yeah. Anyway, Hoopy. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
it was
RT.
That's it. Yes.
RT did give you it did support it was like full Win32 stuff, but everything had to be recompiled. So
well, and they did rip out a lot of old stuff.
Yeah, probably.
That was one of the things, and that's why it didn't work for a lot of people. Is because, I mean, don't get me wrong, the UI had a lot of issues, obviously, but there were also a lot of things where, I mean, app developers were trying to build apps and were buying fully into Metro as a UI, but then as they were trying to build stuff, they would run into blocks where it's like, oh, you guys also scooped out this one old API, you didn't replace it with something new, so we can't build apps that do these dozens of different things, and at that point you can't build apps that people need. So that comes up a lot in those old, or in at least Windows RT situation. Yeah, Windows RT was a long time ago. But
yeah, I guess the angle this time is that like it's specific. I don't know. I'll be interested to see like if what this looks like from an end user standpoint. Like, are they just building the stripped down Windows for like just schools to use? Because that would make sense. But I think as soon as you have something that is called Windows but is not Windows and doesn't run most Windows software, they're going to have issues. That's probably what helped kill 10X. Mm-hmm. So I'm interested to see how they handle that. If they just call it, if this ends up being something that like you only get with like Azure deployments, like is this something like really only schools and organizations can touch? And then they do say later in this article that Microsoft is reportedly also working on a version of this architecture that is just the current Windows desktop but more isolated. So that's probably not going to break as much. I don't know, maybe. Again, this is the operating system that still has like 5 different browser engines in it because nothing is ever allowed to break. So we'll
another example of why of how they can scoop out a lot of legacy stuff and make it pretty tiny.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just the fact that they keep having to support this really low-powered hardware stuff is why they haven't tried some of this yet. But I am still kind of surprised they haven't done this either isolation or something with this sort of technology for a while, because they've been like really going hard on virtualization in other parts of Windows for a very long time. Like even going back to like Windows 7 had a Windows XP mode where it just fires up Windows XP in a VM. Mm-hmm. And then, the current Xbox consoles, like they're literally always running like a hypervisor. Like all the games run in a hypervisor, and that's how they can just completely pause the state and you can come back to it later.
Yeah.
So like they've been doing a lot with this for a long time, and it's kind of surprising that it hasn't trickle down to this, because this is a great use case for it, like containerizing as much as possible. But I'm sure it's a result of, you always have like some things that break. Like, I know this is a constant problem in like IT, where you have some kind of equipment that was built like 30 years ago, and the only way you can interface with it is like a Windows XP PC, and you cannot virtualize it because it desperately needs like this specific hardware access, and they've already tried it. Don't tell them to to try putting in a VM. It doesn't work. So maybe there's too much of that, and that's why they haven't been willing to try yet. I don't know. But
I'm sure.
again, I was saying this when Windows 10X was new. Is I'd like to see them try, because, there's got to be a balance somewhere here between Apple, which breaks software more than like 3 years old on a regular basis, and
Yeah.
making sure Office 95 continues to work natively on Windows 11. There's got to be like an in between somewhere. And like, I mean, it's been really interesting watching what's been happening to desktop Linux for the past like 5 to 10 years, where a lot of developers and even users at this point are like really on board with stuff like Flatpak and FlatHub, where containerization isn't like always the main thing, but it's like a great way to like, okay, great, you've got your app that's like all packaged and it doesn't really need much else from the host system. So again, I'd like to see them do more stuff like this, but haven't seen much of that ship quite yet.
Yeah. So I gotta say, cheers in a sense to Microsoft for at least heading down this road, because it seems like this may be the least ill-conceived attempt to sort of bring Windows to a place that is reasonably in the future. Because it seems like what they're trying to achieve, which is how they should have probably tried to achieve this way back then, is tackling it by trying to create a Windows experience that is as close to existing Windows as possible, while transitioning towards something that is taking a lot of the lessons learned from mobile platforms and shifting into that. While at the same time, presumably, it seems like they're also trying to create sort of their target operating system, which would be more like basically an iPad platform, but obviously still more Windowsy in its experience. And logically, the way to go with this is then to try to make it as easy as possible for developers to target both and keep the software running on both. And eventually, when, like, somewhere in a distant future, and when I say distant future, I mean like, 4 to 5 years down the line, presumably people will be sitting there trying to make a decision about whether or not they need we'll call it pro device that is sort of like classic legacy everything, versus a core PC or whatever. And ideally they look at that and go, you know what, I don't care anymore. I don't need the legacy stuff. I can just go core PC. At which point Microsoft will have actually finally successfully transitioned people out of legacy Windows. There will still be companies and developers and regular enthusiasts, whatever. There will still be a bunch of people using the Pro version that is basically all legacy stuff. But eventually, someday, those will fade out, or they will just stop caring, or they might even just say, you know what, we're done upgrading. Our computers will just forever live on ancient versions. And so be it. But yeah, I mean, Microsoft needed a way to make a break. They were never going to make a clean break, and it seems like this is their chance to actually do it right. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I'll see. So far, they've been unwilling to do anything like this again in the consumer space. If they want to make a flavor of Windows that like normal people can't buy, and you only ever see in schools or businesses, like I can see that because they've kind of done stuff like that for a while. But I think the problem with Windows is that there's I'm sure there's a lot of modern software, like things that got released in the past few months, that are just using really fucking old APIs behind the scenes. Like, again, that's why they can't get rid of the Internet Explorer engine in Windows, because there's a lot of software that still uses like the original WebView stuff that relies on. So like, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff like that where if they try to make a clean break, there would be like a lot of software and games that would need maybe significant rewrites. Again, depending on how far they go, but yeah, I mean, I'd like to see them try something, because they made something of a clean break with Windows 11, but only in the annoying way, in that it required new hardware and had very little, seemingly very little difference from a user perspective, because you could put Windows 11 on something without a, you know, modern TPM chip, and it appears to work exactly the same. So, Poopy said, I'm surprised they haven't pushed harder to move people from Electron to a semi-proprietary Windows API based on WebView 2. Well, there's two things there. Number one, so WebView 2 it's mostly for places you need like a web view and an otherwise like larger app. So like if your app needs a login screen and it needs to show a web page, that's where you would use WebView 2. It also does have this component where it's supposed to help power like Electron style full apps. But Microsoft is still very much fleshing that out. I think the only they don't really have any apps shipping based on that yet, as far as I know. I know they're working on the new Microsoft Teams, which is WebView 2, and they're working on the new Outlook for Windows, which I believe is WebView 2. In Windows 11, the like consumer Teams app, like the thing that shows up when you click Teams in the taskbar, that is WebView 2, but that's just like a system component kind of thing. Microsoft's not shipping any like cross-platform apps on that yet, so I don't think it's like really super ready for that. Because like the main reason devs use Electron is because you can get it on everything. Like you've got one code base for Mac, Linux, and Windows, and Microsoft has only shipped things on WebView 2 on Windows. I don't know if it actually exists on Mac yet. Also, I don't know how they would update that. I guess if they wanted to build like an updater into the system that just needs to run in the background occasionally. Because also the thing with WebView 2 is that it's supposed to be like Adobe Air was back in the day, where it's just like one framework that gets updated and then everyone uses that. It's not like 15 copies of Chromium. But.
So I'm also going to throw kind of just here's one of those strategic discussions that a lot of, not all, but a lot of dev shops obviously have to just, they have to have this conversation. Why should we use a proprietary or semi-proprietary thing when Electron is not proprietary? Why, like, somebody make a convincing argument for this? And at the end of the day, you're gonna have a lot of people obviously pointing to Electron and just saying, well, there's no argument for this, let's just keep using Electron. There are other people who are going to argue in favor of using something like WebView 2. But then you run into this complication. That complication is, if you're not going to use a proprietary, or sorry, if you are going to use a proprietary thing, why are you using it? And your reasons usually come down to either it's going to look nicer and give a better experience to users, or you need something that's native, like in some capacity. And once you have that conversation, it's like, okay, well, why aren't you just writing an actual proper native app? Why would you use WebView 2? So there's, I mean, just from the developer angle, there obviously are going to be scenarios where WebView 2 is a good answer for stuff because, I mean, as you mentioned, it is, it has, well, did you mention or just imply? I don't remember. Anyway, obviously, yeah, you can use a whole lot of web stuff, and you can take advantage of being, slightly closer to native while you do it. But that's kind of a narrow group of scenarios where you still want to use basically the same stuff you would have done with Electron, but you want it to be very native-y. And but yeah, you keep coming, not but any dev shop that's in this position is going to keep circling back to, well, we should either do it in Electron so we write it once, or we need to do it natively so we get to take advantage of everything, at which point we should just be writing native software, or we should pick some other cross-platform thing that can still be more native than either of these other solutions. So yeah, that's why Electron is still a thing. Honestly, this is 100% the reason Electron is still a thing, because no one wants to have to make this choice and try to come up with something that's kind of halfway between them. There's no good halfway between them. You either just commit to cross-platform, doing it the cheaper and easier way, or you commit to make it native, like for real native.
Yeah, and Hoopy said, I mean, Discord isn't using Electron because they need OS integrations. They're using it because junior web devs are so much easier to hire than high-skill Windows devs. Also, Microsoft does have one notable Electron app, VS Code. Yeah. So I've not tried to build anything with Electron, so I'm gonna preface that. I briefly
did once, and it's awful.
Yeah.
Well,
so
I did build something with Electron. It's terrible.
Yeah. So the thing with Electron is that it's just like a web environment with like elevated permissions and like some extra APIs. And Discord specifically, I don't know if any more, because like here's the thing, like initially Electron was such a massive functionality jump from just a web app because we didn't have web APIs for all this stuff. But like the past couple years, Google has been very specifically trying to add all this to Chromium. So now just in Chrome, without any special frameworks, you can talk to Bluetooth devices, you can talk to USB devices. They've got really great screen sharing stuff in there. You can like talk to, there's more audio frameworks. So like definitely the number of things, and like all that is based on like a permissions model, but it's much easier to take all of that and just be like, okay, if you're running as an app, you just automatically get all of this enabled. And go on your way. So like, I honestly, I don't know if I'm trying to think what Discord does, I bet really the only thing that they can't, maybe they can't do in something like a normal web app is like see which game you're running. And I know there's also like an API where like games can talk to the local Discord app and do stuff. Maybe they can't do that, but yeah, like it's these two different paths of development where like web is trying to expand into what you used to have to need like Electron for or something, is changing this equation a little bit. But yeah, Hoopy also MS does have VS Code. Yeah, I'm interested if they ever like try to get that onto WebView 2. That would be fascinating. And also the other component here is that Microsoft owns Electron. So they're sort of competing with themselves. That was a GitHub project and they bought GitHub. So that's going to be interesting. But I definitely think the way forward is doing like web apps that have all these APIs, but they're in the browser environment they're very restricted and you need to grant a lot of permissions. But when they're running in a desktop like environment, they just have all of it automatically. Because then also you can when you're a developer, you can just share all the code. You have the same logic for everything.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, I'm holding to the basic principle that I think WebView 2 just isn't an attractive option for most scenarios. It is good in those scenarios.
Also, I was
Okay.
gonna say I forgot. WebView 2. Again, I don't know if I don't think it's shipping on anything but Windows, and also it's not being updated on Windows 10 anymore. So, because again, WebView 2 is Edge, and Microsoft stopped shipping Edge updates. When it was introduced, it worked. I don't know if it worked back to Windows 7, but it was definitely available on. Well, Microsoft Edge, the new Chromium browser, was on Windows 7 and 8 and 8.1. I don't know if WebView 2 got back to 7, but it was definitely on 8. So again, if I'm like a big company and I've got a sizable amount of people still using my thing with like Windows 8, like that's not like that old. Like this is kind of a non-starter to begin with. Because Microsoft's done updating WebView on all those platforms.
See, yeah, I didn't realize that, but you're bringing up another issue here. And actually, this is exactly the reason why WebView 2 would not be useful at all.
Yeah.
A ton of companies, and I mean this goes beyond WebView 2, by the way. This goes for a lot of stuff. A ton of companies would be looking at they would look at a history like that and say, should we dedicate development resources to building for an API or a platform or anything that might get abandoned in a couple of years? Mm-hmm. And the answer is pretty much always going to be no. And, just ask so many developers who have tried building anything on Google's platforms. Google, I mean, if you want like the best example ever, oh god, what was the name of it? The Android embedded thing. I'm drawing a blank on what it was actually called. But yeah, what was its name? Anyway, Google was promoting it really heavily. I mean, I've literally got a couple of their like developer kits with like a bunch of components sitting in the other room in basically unopened boxes. And they were pushing those really hard. And then it was like a year and a half later, or maybe it was by the next year, they had announced like, we're closing shop on this. It's done. Android Things. Thank you. That's what it is. Yeah. Like they were abandoning it. It was dead. And they gave basically like a cutoff date for they were going to completely stop supporting it. And their cutoff date was really short. I heard a lot of developers get pretty furious about this. And I'm sure it wasn't big names. Big names didn't bother implementing this stuff. But little guys did. There were a fair number of little companies and startups and early attempts that tried this, and Google killed it. And it's not like Microsoft has a history of doing this as frequently, but they do. I mean, they do occasionally kill things like this, and I mean, that's a good reason to avoid something if there is a reason to expect it's not going to live, and this is kind of a good example of that.
Yay, software development.
Yeah.
And yeah, I did just check, and yeah, WebView 2 it has identical support to Edge. So now the version on Windows 7 and 8 is done getting updates. So like it's still there, but now you're limited to the web features that were in that version, which stinks. And also, Electron is also dropping support for Windows 7 and 8. So basically the same situation there, except it's open source. So like if you really wanted to keep backporting security updates, you could, I guess. No one's going to do that.
Yeah.
So
and to be fair, abandoning 7 and 8 at this stage is not that unreasonable.
Yeah.
So I kind of get it. But to be fair, there is also a bit of an angle. I don't know how the update mechanism works with this, but when we're talking about Electron, it's hard not to point out that you basically just end up with kind of like a shell, and then whenever it's time to like push an update for that app, it usually just kind of like auto downloads whatever replacement, and most of your app is actually just kind of coming from another service. The thing is, if you're talking about more native oriented apps, a lot of times the story's a bit different. Like you ship a version, and if support ends like at Microsoft's side, oh well, the native versions you shipped still continue to work. Nothing's going to change there. You just have to make sure that nothing on the network level is going to be a problem. But otherwise, you can leave software out there. I don't know what the situation is with like Electron, where if something on the OS is not going to support a feature, like does Electron just do the new versions that you build stop working or not? Because I think that's how things went with Steam when they decided that they were going to abandon certain versions of the OS. At that point, Steam just stops working on that version of the OS.
I mean, I think Edge View 2 is supposed to stay there. They're just not updating anymore. Again, like the rest of the OS.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, I mean, all this is really interesting, and I'm still hesitant that Microsoft is building a lot of their own products with these web technologies, because it's kind of frustrating. That's part of the reason I'm on Mac now. Is like, guys, please build an app that like fits in with the rest of your platform. Don't make me run another like basic app that takes up 500 megabytes of RAM when it's running. But they have been like, again, WebView 2 seems to be a pretty big step above Electron. Like when they announced the new Microsoft Teams that uses that, it's like at least twice as better on like every metric. Like opens twice as fast, runs twice as fast, uses half the RAM. So they're doing a better job of it now. But yeah, I mean it's interesting seeing them again still struggle to compete with Chromebooks. That should be a really easy goal by now, because Chromebooks have scaled up to the point where they run just as poorly as the Windows machines in those price brackets.
Yeah.
So it's like both of these things will have Android VMs. Like, I don't know what their issue is, but they're still having issues there. Again, we've had Chromebooks for more than a decade. You'd think they would have figured something out by now.
Oh man, there's so many ways to go down on that road. But yeah, anyway, I don't see there being a lot of compelling reasons to go to WebView 2 for specifically, but also just a lot of other cross-platform stuff right now is kind of just paling in comparison to Electron, which none of us are fans of Electron, but it's just so damn cheap to build for multiple OSs going that route. And even like it was mentioned earlier, sorry, I think it was Austin who said it, and maybe Hoopy, it's just so much cheaper to buy, or not buy, but to hire relatively new web developers than it is to hire like good software developers who know how to build for native APIs.
Yeah. And again, like if you're building a desktop thing, like you're probably going to have a web app too. Probably don't want to do the same thing twice in two completely different ways.
Yeah.
So
that being said, the app that I'm working on right now, 100% building it native for Mac, and then I'm going to build it native for Windows. And could I build it using Electron or something else? Yeah. Am I going to? No, because I think people will care, which probably makes me dumb.
Yeah, anyway, I think we should just go back to writing desktop apps in Java. So let's move on.
Oh, hell no, son. Let that Java crap die.
Those were dark days.
No, there was never a good day when Java was involved. Just ask Google.
It's true. Don't let Oracle control anything else.
No.
Okay, so do you want to do I can do one more thing and then I need to get food.
Okay. Well, I'm thinking of the two things I have left. The one that I think is most salient, it's Ron's piece about Google Assistant versus Google Bard, basically. He is theorizing that Google Assistant is basically on its way out, and it's going to be effectively replaced by Bard, or in some capacity. Like the team that is developing Assistant, he's pretty sure is going to be going over to Bard. So this is, strictly speaking, more of an editorial. There's not a lot in the way of inside information. There's no revelations coming out of Google, basically confirming that Assistant is dead and everyone's going to Bard. However, there is it is well known that several of the Assistant developers are currently have been reassigned to and are working on Bard. The presumption here is that effectively Assistant is on the way out. They're basically going to develop Bard to fully replace it, and somewhere in the near or distant future, I don't think Ron really makes a presumption there, but somewhere in the future, you'll be talking to an hopefully upgraded version of Bard instead of talking to Assistant, as we know it today. So there's a lot of reason that I'm kind of hedging on my language here, and there's a reason I'm kind of calling out that this isn't based on anything other than some relatively minor details. But also, Ron makes a very distinctive issue about the fact that Google Assistant doesn't, quote, make money. And he also highlights that they haven't released any new Assistant-based hardware in 2 years. I think that these are kind of flaccid arguments, largely in the point that, well, who cares if they haven't released new hardware in the last couple of years? Was the hardware really making any money for them? As far as I know, most of it wasn't even selling at much of a profit. So,
I mean, this is the same argument you can make with Chrome OS, where Google is kind of done with it themselves, but there's still a lot of companies building their own stuff with it. So, I wouldn't say, again, one of those things is a computer operating system, the other is a voice interface, but I wouldn't say Chrome OS is. I don't think it's a dig that Google isn't really working on any Chrome OS hardware, especially considering they control the hardware platform and firmware anyway. So they still kind of are. They just won't sell one with their logo on it.
Well, and also I would argue, I don't think it even depends on like a voice interface versus OS. I would just say there's a cost of entry associated with being a company of this size with the kinds of products that they're pushing. If anything, actually, I would say Chrome OS, and this is not a dig at Chrome OS, but I'm just saying, I think there's even less reason for Chrome OS to exist than there is Google Assistant. I mean, you have to have a voice interface on a phone right now. Let's be honest. If let's say in some hypothetical world you still had Windows Phone floating around, does anyone here think that they could do that without Cortana? Or at this point, is it just kind of a foregone conclusion? Apple has to have Siri. Google has to have Assistant. Microsoft would have to have Cortana. If Amazon were still in the phone game, they would have to have Alexa. Like, all of these things, you don't have a choice. Like, it is the cost of entry. You have to have a voice assistant on a phone now. Whether or not it's a good voice assistant, I mean, ask Apple. They're still getting away with Siri. But, and yes, that is a dig. Anyway, so I think that no matter what, they have to have something. And strictly speaking, this isn't... Obviously, Ron is proposing that they're just going to replace one thing with another thing. But, the point is, you can't kill one of these things and then just hope that the other thing replaces it. Where I kind of challenge it is the notion that Google Assistant actually does make money. I don't know if it's a lot. In fact, I would almost bet against it. But it does make money. Anytime that you use Google Assistant with any of Google's specific like assistant partners that it kind of promotes and recommends to do things like ordering products to your house, if it's paying through Google Assistant, Google's taking money off the top. I don't know that they're making much money on it, but they're making some. So it is making a profit. It's probably just pitiful. And that's not going to change with Bard. To me, that's where a lot of the argument even breaks down. All the problems he cites with Google Assistant are not fixed by Bard. Bard is not going to make more money. If anything, it's actually going to cost more. Because running these AI chatbots is famously way more expensive. Every query costs money. And it's not like you get away from that problem. I don't think. Awesome. Windows 12 Clippy AI. Oh, God.
Yeah, this is an interesting proposition because you, like, all of this is like none of the current batch of AI stuff touches your like operating system in any way, but Google Assistant does. Mm-hmm. So there would need to be a lot of plugins for that, which is like kind of what we're seeing with ChatGPT, where they're trying to build plugins to make an interface with other systems. So like Google could do something like that, but like I think really they would just end up with something that is functionally close to Assistant. Like I don't think Assistant is like dead or not popular or not making money or whatever because it can't do enough. Like it actually does a lot. The issue is just like you don't need it to do a lot of this. Like I think of this kind of also like how the discussion with smartwatches changed, where when there's a new computing interface or a new form factor, there's a level of expectation that, oh, we're all going to use this in the future. Like Meta was trying to do with VR for years, where it's like, all right, we got VR, everyone's switching to VR in 5 years, everyone's going to be doing meetings in VR. And they didn't happen with smartwatches. They're just like a cool accessory for your phone. Maybe you have it, maybe you don't, doesn't matter. Same thing happened with virtual assistants. We're like, yeah, I use Siri or Google Assistant or whatever to like set a timer sometimes, and it works great for that. I don't need it to do anything else. I don't really see like what there has to be a functional upgrade if they switch it to Bard, because Bard's way more expensive. I don't think that's going to change in the future. Like, I'm sure they've got Google Assistant costs down to like as far as they can go at this point in time.
Well, purportedly, they went out of their way to move Google Assistant to phones, not just to reduce, obviously, like the big sales pitch was, hey, it's going to take less data. And if it's on your phone, you can even use it when you're not even connected to anything. So they had a sales pitch, but it was also, a lot of people knew the big incentive for them was their servers could just be used less. Like, they could cut so much processing that was happening on their server side by just letting it happen on the device. So they had a big incentive.
Yeah, and
Bard, that doesn't work the same way.
Yeah, I mean, Amazon does too, where Amazon made a chip for their Echo speakers where you can ask a handful of questions and it doesn't need to talk to a server at all. Like, I can ask it to like what's the time or whatever, and it'll answer me without needing an internet connection at all, which is really fun because like I'll ask it like what's the time, and then like a second later I'll ask a different question and be like, oh sorry, I don't know, I'm not connected to the internet right now. But yeah, like I don't know like what the because again, like all of the use cases that I see for Bard beyond just like talking to it long enough to make it depressed or give the appearance of being depressed. I try not to like describe these in the way someone would describe a person, because then it gets weird. It's saying it's depressed, but like I don't know what the functional upgrade with like switching to a Bard thing would be. Like, how does that make me setting a timer any better?
Right.
It doesn't. It just makes it more expensive for Google servers.
Okay, and so I do think that there is an argument to be made for covering obscure language choices. Along the lines of like maybe we'll assume that they still have activation phrase kind of thing and don't get clever with that. But asking variations on I don't know. I'm trying to come up with something that's a good what time of day is it, but I got nothing. But I don't know. Asking questions about like how long is it before a certain thing happens, but you ask it in some way that they never thought to write into the possible script. I could see something like Bard being really good for that because it's adaptable to more language choices. That aspect of it makes a lot of sense. And that's usually not asking for a whole lot to happen on device, which Austin's obviously bringing up the question of will they be able to move this onto a device? I know you're saying they will do it, not will they be able to do it, but I'm sure they will try and probably succeed to move a small amount of stuff onto device, but I think in practical terms, a lot of it's still going to have to go to Google servers for the short-term future. Someday, on an infinite timeline, yes, they would absolutely move a massive AI model onto your phone.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is like, yeah, Austin saying, don't you think they'll minimize it? Like, yeah, like, but that's gonna be a while.
Yeah, and
especially
what minimal level, how minimal can you get and still be useful?
Especially when you look at, again, like a lot of Android's market share, and even Chrome OS, because like, Assistant is on Chrome OS, so that has to be part of the discussion. A lot of those devices have really bad hardware. Like, the ones that are selling the most are the really low end ones that people buy because they, that's what's available. or is the most price competitive. So you have to put a, you know, at least part of one of these models on like a budget Android phone. That's hard. Maybe they could do something where, like, if you ask something very simple, it doesn't need to use Bard at all. But like, if you try to do something more complex, eventually Google service is like, okay, pass this to the Bard to figure out. We don't know what to do with this.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they'll do something like that. I don't know, but
yeah, I'm expecting a lot
like,
of fallback will always be part of their strategy.
Because also the thing with this technology and why I don't think it's like it's not a one-to-one replacement for something like Assistant or Siri is that these large language models are built for processing a lot of data that you input and outputting a lot of data. That is the opposite of what most people want from a virtual assistant. They want something that is going to give you like a very like quick and concise, like, okay, turn your lights on, or, you know, a pretty simple request, pretty simple answer. You don't need one of these language models for that. Again, like if you try to do something more complex, like I could see this being useful for like multi-step stuff, which is something that like Google Assistant and Alexa still struggle with, where if you want to be like, you know, turn the lights on and turn on, you know, my Spotify playlist, they're not like 100% good at that. But
so Austin brings up something that is such a good avenue for me to twist around what your intention is. Sorry, I'm just going to come right out and say that's what I'm about to do here. So you say, are people actually going to use these AI assistants for more than sending alarms? Right out of the gate, counter question, would that not be a reason to not use an AI assistant? If your list of main features for a voice assistant, and remember, it is worth noting, voice assistant versus AI assistant. AI assistant, generative AI assistant, as we're talking about it, is for developing the words that come out. Voice assistant is the actual audio portion. So, you know, I suppose that's a factor here too. But in terms of what these things are doing, like if you can come up with, let's say, 100 features or 100 functions that every single person's doing, why do you need an AI assistant to do this?
Yeah.
It seems like the smarter thing. In my interpretation of it is instead of sticking a whole AI assistant with a language model on it, which even simplified, it would be very simplified, I'm sure. But instead of doing that, wouldn't it just be better to use the AI assistant to generate a crapload more possible adjustments on the language model? This would still be a fraction of the size of the actual language model itself. Just generate all of those and stick them in as something that the regular Google Assistant can read from. That is still way less processing power, way less risk of it getting it wrong. It's more likely to just work. It will work faster. And again, it's smaller and it can still be updated. All of these things, it's better than using an AI assistant. The only reason to use an AI assistant is for hype. In that specific use case. If we're talking about like setting alarms and asking what time it is, and, you know, maybe commanding the phone to turn the screen off and whatever.
Yeah. So
yeah, right now there's no practical benefit to using AI to do basic commands. Again, like, AI can generate versions of those commands that people might use linguistically, but there's just no practical reason why AI needs to exist to actually do that processing. Where I could see this working differently is if you build in those language features into Google Assistant as it is, and then somebody says something to it that it doesn't quite understand, or it's not sure that it has, the right thing. At which point, I could see Google Assistant going, you know what? That's a great question. Hold on. We're going to have Bard answer it for you. If Bard is a fallback, then that's perfect. It can still go back to Google servers. You could, sure, you could put Bard onto phones to even answer those questions. Like, that makes sense. But for so many of the basic things, like telling it to turn on a light or something like that, I'd rather have the current version of Google Assistant trying to do this because, frankly, A, it probably is more reliable. Bard is not good at this stuff yet. And B, Bard is going to take more processing power. Whether it's on your phone or on a Google server somewhere, it doesn't matter. It's just taking more, which ultimately means it's still better to just use Google Assistant in pretty much all of those scenarios. But in the instances where you can't do that, yes, please fall back to Bard. Use Bard as the fallback, but not as your first line.
Yeah, like it's interesting, and like a lot of the examples of assistance decline in this is more just like reorganization stuff, because also the thing that's conflating this is that Assistant for a while was like a catch-all for a bunch of things that like were kind of sort of connected. Like Ron mentions, Google Assistant reminders were switched to a different thing that used like the Google Tasks backend. So like they're still like pretty functionally identical, but actually they're better now because they plug into like Gmail and stuff properly. And mentions that the new Nest Wi-Fi doesn't have Assistant because it's not a smart speaker anymore. Probably just to make it cheaper. I'm sure they ran the numbers and found that like most people would just want the router and not also make it a smart speaker that has a microphone you need to remember is running.
Well, and I remember even a lot of people complaining that they didn't want something listening to what they said, which okay, sure, you carry your phone that's doing the same thing. I don't think you really are saving yourself there, but go on, stick with it.
Yeah. Well, I guess for me, it's like how many things like are listening at any given moment that I have to like remember to go like mute if I know I'm gonna accidentally flick them on or whatever. But yeah, so like part of this is the reorganization stuff. Part of this is the fact that there was a phase where Assistant was kind of sort of in the same boat as AI now, but not nearly to this extent, at least as far as I remember, where like it was heralded as like, oh, this is just how we're going to use computers now, we're just going to talk to it. No, we're going to use it to set alarms, and that's going to be it.
Yeah.
And it works great.
And that's not to say that we don't still use it for other stuff. I mean, my mom on a regular basis will ask Assistant a question or two about like when was a certain person born, or how was someone in a certain movie, or things like that. She does that because it's more convenient than reaching for a phone and looking it up. That's fine. It makes sense.
And again, that's something that Bard is much worse at right now.
Yeah, Bard is terrible.
It doesn't link to anything.
And a lot of times it does make stuff up. It quote unquote hallucinates.
Yeah, like, am I going to ask Google Assistant when George Washington was born? And it's going to say, 2018, obviously.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I see Bart, like, again, operating under the assumption that these AI tools are actually useful in more than just a few niche cases. Most of their use comes from like things I don't really think I would do through a voice interface, really. Like, again, like converting data or checking, my code or something. They're like, Microsoft is trying to Microsoft is kind of close to this with Bing, where like if you have the Bing app on your phone, you can like there is like a basic voice interface where you can do a voice query and then it will respond in spoken term, but it still struggles with that. And I don't know. Again, like this is something that is not really the same use case, and you know, Ron does mention that Google many times replaces one thing with another thing that is not entirely a good replacement. So, you know, I could. I'm not saying. Yeah, I'm not saying Google would never do this because I'm sure they could. I don't. It's kind of weird. Austin said, "Yeah, I want Bard to turn down the passive aggressiveness in my emails." That's a bad thing. Yeah. So I don't know. It's gonna be interesting seeing how this stuff is connected to things that we're already using, especially with the rumors that Windows 12 is supposed to be like more AI heavy, but I don't know what that means. Because again, all this stuff has to scale up a lot more. If you're putting like something in Windows, which has like, I imagine it has to have over 1 billion users.
Oh yeah,
because I know Android passed that landmark a long time ago.
Yeah.
So you're doing a lot of scaling up that needs a lot of servers until you figure out how to run an LLM locally. So yeah, I don't. It's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, and just I know it's a bit of a cheap shot, but just remember LLM literally the first word in that is large. I don't know how much anyone wants to stick a quote unquote large thing on their phone whose only purpose is to give you wrong answers.
Yeah.
Obviously they will make these things better. I'm not disputing that, but you know, I feel like we're a long way from seeing something that both fits on a phone, works well on a phone without sucking too much battery life, and is practical for this purpose. But certainly could happen.
Yeah, especially given other factors, like again, like the idea that this will fit on a run well on a phone, in a world where like a lot of places we're still struggling to upgrade like a lot of the devices people use and the infrastructure to handle all of this. Like again, like when you look at the most popular Android devices, it's like the stuff with like a gig of RAM that already can barely run the normal operating system, and you want to put an LLM on that, or you know, your option is run it on the device, or you know, a trimmed down version on the device, or you get 1 billion more requests, you know, each day for the LLMs in a server farm somewhere, when you know electricity availability is still a problem in a lot of the world and is not getting better.
Particularly in California.
Yeah, it's like that's the other thing is like, I know there's like a laundry list of things that don't really get brought up as much with these technologies as I feel like they should be, and I try to bring them up when I can, when I have a reason to, and I don't need to overcomplicate. But like I thought all the tech companies were like doing a slightly good job of trying to hit those carbon neutral goals, which were already pretty bullshit. But
they were doing a good job until suddenly Bitcoin factored back into their investment strategies. But go on.
Bitcoin, and also now you're introducing something that needs a lot of server farms, that needs a lot of GPU power, at a time when already we can't really keep up with GPU production, because there's like 3 factories in the world that can do that. One of which might get, you know, bombed by China at any given moment, or we bomb them. Who knows? Yeah. You know, you never know. So it's like a lot of things have to scale up for this to work out, and we haven't really figured that out yet. But it's okay. The stock price went up, so
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll figure it out.
So also, so at this point, I think I want to give my own interpretation of one of Ron's key elements of proof, which is basically he spends about two paragraphs effectively talking about the people that are known to have basically been working on assistant or assistant related features, and then are now in whatever context now working with or towards Bard. And my read on that, he obviously seems to think that this means that they are abandoning assistant and now going to work on Bard. My take is a little different. I see this as the amount of work left to be done on Google Assistant is obviously less than there was. Assistant is really good at understanding language in a lot of languages and a lot of dialects and accents. So do we still need a bunch of people working on that? No. Google Assistant already does a lot of the stuff people actually want it to do. Do we still need people working on that? Like, can we make it better at, I don't know, turning on and off lights? Probably not. I mean,
yeah, Assistant is very much in the same realm as like Android, where it's pretty much feature complete. You're just doing like little refinements where you can, and also a lot of the issues with Google Assistant are more issues with like the larger like Google Home smart home ecosystem thing, which is a completely different thing. So yeah, again, it makes total sense to me that Google's like, oh, you guys worked on the thing that like takes input from natural language. Great, get on over here. You know,
I would even, I'm going to take the way people often talk about Apple internals, like Apple developers, and apply the same logic here. They took some people who worked on a product. It was successful and continues to be successful, and now they're assigning them to another product that they want to be, oh my god, successful. They took people who have a proven track record of getting a thing working, and they put them on another thing that they want to get working. This is normal. This is normal company stuff. It doesn't mean you're abandoning, killing an old product. It means that you're taking your best people, at least best within a certain type of area, and you're assigning them to to make things work on another thing. Apple very famously took a ton of their macOS developers and reassigned them to work on iOS. And this lasted for, I think, 3 years. Is macOS dead? Show me. Show of hands. Who here heard that macOS is dead? That Apple has abandoned it? Weird. I don't see any hands, and I'm just assuming that after the YouTube delay, there still will be no hands. And Kirby, keep your hand down. I don't know if Kirby's actually in right now, but that's the whole thing. Like, there's no reason to think Assistant is actually dead or dying at this instant. What we have is a pretty good reason to think that Google is just reassigning, at least for now, maybe permanently, more people to push Bard faster, to give it more power towards actually getting somewhere. But none of this means that Assistant's gone.
Yeah, I mean, it would not surprise me because, like, the current strategy Microsoft is doing this. Anywhere it makes sense to put this AI bullshit, they're putting it in. So I can totally see some version of Assistant where, like, again, like part of it gets, some of the requests get handed off to Bard, or there's some other integration, like maybe I can like ask Assistant to let me talk to Bard and I can do it through there, and it's like an Assistant app thing. Wouldn't surprise me if they do something like that, but I think Assistant is a much different ask to have Bard replace it because of where Assistant needs to be. and what the server infrastructure needs to be. Because also a lot of the stuff that Assistant, like I keep going back to the servers because like that is a really big deal at a time when again we're still having a lot of hardware shortages. Where are you going to get the GPUs from, Google? Like, you're going to go like tussle with Nvidia over like whatever TSMC's got left.
I'm gonna. This is a stretch, I admit, but I'm gonna throw a bit of a curveball at that one. Have we considered the possibility that maybe there are just so many fewer people using Assistant on a daily basis than we actually thought in the past? Maybe if they were to let all of that processing happen through Bard, maybe there might just actually be enough compute power already available, and there just aren't nearly as many hits.
I mean, with phones and tablets and like Chromebooks, I could see it not being like a lot of usage, but there's also the entire category of devices for which Assistant is the only interface.
True. That's a good point.
Like, and that's where you need the server stuff. Like, I know for a fact my Google Home from 2016, you cannot put a local AI framework on that. I don't think that's going to happen.
No.
So, yeah, but again, Google does have all those Stadia servers that have GPUs in them that aren't being used anymore. So maybe this is economical for them. I don't know.
Yeah, they could be retasking all of those old servers for this exact use. That kind of actually would make some sense.
Austin said,
yeah.
Google's AI releases have been an embarrassment for Sundar, and I definitely see him overswinging. I mean, I was talking about this in, I don't know if it was your server, Cody, but like, I think it was, where I have not seen this level of like test and break stuff in the open from these large tech companies in a long time like this. Like, obviously they all do it to an extent. Like, Google does this a lot. Microsoft has some stuff that's like, really experimental and not done yet, but like I haven't quite seen this level of like, you can tell like everything is, not only is everything being rushed, but everything is being pushed out as soon as it's like anywhere close to functional. Like, they're not like, when you go look at the blog that Microsoft has for Bing, and they're like writing multiple blog posts a week about like pretty substantial changes going out. Like, you can tell like the development cycle that normally takes much longer because there's more testing is just very trimmed down, where it's like, do you have something that works? Okay, great, it's released now. And I haven't really seen anything like that I can think of in a long time. And Microsoft's been doing that out in the open. Google still hasn't really. I mean, they ship Bard, but well, sort of. It's like a preview thing that doesn't work. But yeah, like this just seems like a game where no one comes out as a winner. Like every Microsoft is I guess they're ahead. I don't know.
I feel like okay, just in my own experience testing stuff and from what I've seen other people do, my impression is that everyone perceives GPT-4 to be like the thing that's actually most ahead, with 3.5 being, I guess, next most. And then closely behind, because supposedly it runs on the same code or something, supposedly Bing. And I feel like of the chat bots that exist, and Bard really being the only other one, the impression I seem to be getting is that Bard is the distant last place contender. And I agree with this personally. To me, Bard has been so categorically wrong on such a much higher level that, yeah, I tend to think Bard is in last place, but I have seen other people arguing that it shouldn't be considered last place. Usually because of speed, and I know that conversation happened on my Discord earlier. But some people seem happier with the answers. I haven't really figured out why, but that seems to be true.
I guess the thing where the embarrassment really comes in is the fact that Google has positioned itself as the leader here for years. And when it comes time to release something, like it's not great behind the thing that is already not great.
Yeah.
So, Austin said Google keeps announcing things that aren't as good as the version Microsoft announced a week earlier, but yeah, I guess nothing's actually shipped yet, so we'll see. Yeah, that's the other thing is like, talk is cheap. And Microsoft announced a laundry list of things they're going to put in, like the Office apps and Outlook and Teams and stuff. None of that has shipped yet. I don't even know if it's in preview. Well, I know it's not in preview from like a normal user perspective. I think they're still enabling this for like a handful of like corporate workspaces. But like I don't even, they're being really opaque about that. I don't know who has access to all the things they've announced for their apps yet. Google, I think, was in the news like sometime in the past few days that like some people can try the Gmail Bard stuff now and Google Docs.
You know,
but
okay, I'm actually wondering if maybe I got that by accident or something, because I was writing an email or was it an email? I don't know. I was writing something recently, and all of a sudden it suggested to me like a paragraph of text. And it, you know, it was
because I know, yeah, because Gmail's had that thing where like autocomplete, but it doesn't go past like a word or
well, I've seen it out to a full sentence, you know, but it's always a relatively simple, straightforward sentence. This was literally like probably about 100 words worth, which was bizarre, and it was an okay suggestion, not one that I was gonna use. It was pretty far from something I would have used, but it would have been a reasonable suggestion if the intention matched what I wanted.
I did just find the article. 9 to 5 Google says that Google is inviting a small group of people to try it. So yeah, like their thing isn't really publicly available yet either.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know, maybe I got some weird lucky just autocomplete thing that was more than usual, or maybe their invite is not actually like an invite, or maybe it's because I agreed to the original Bard invite. Maybe they're picking people from that group and sort of presuming that they agreed to one invite, therefore effectively agreed to this as well. I don't know.
So yeah, part of this also factors into the thing where a lot of people think a piece of software is dead because it's not radically changing on a regular time period, and that frustrates me from a user perspective, because it incentivizes everything to change for the sake of change, which I don't really love. And it also frustrates me as a developer, where it's like, if I've made something that like I think, all right, that's pretty good, I'm gonna move on to something else now, and it still works, like there's nothing wrong with it, I'm just maybe not like, you know, spending all my time adding these features. There's an underlying assumption of like, oh, that's dead, I shouldn't use that. It doesn't seem like that, you know, that GitHub repository hasn't been touched in 2 years. I'm a little worried to try this. So
I was just going to use that example, and also app updates. I literally just a few days ago, I was looking through a few different apps for something on the Play Store, and my default is to go check when was this last updated. Oh, hey, look at that. It hasn't been updated in 6 months. I don't trust this. It might be abandoned. And I'll go pick something that has been updated like in the last month if I can. This is a bad practice. This doesn't make sense.
Okay, I'm gonna amend that a little bit. It does matter a lot in very specific use cases. Like if I see a web browser that has not been updated in 6 months, I'm like, no, don't open that. That's gonna have 7 million 0 days in it. Do not open that.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, like it's okay if you're like, your notes application that isn't being synced to the cloud hasn't been updated in a couple months. That's fine. You're good.
So
you're probably fine.
Low key, there's a lot of developers that know that this is a common problem, or that people do this. So they very intentionally just like do the tiniest updates to their apps, or they might do something as basic as just like update some open source library just to whatever the newest version is, and they'll ship an app. And that is, of course, what typically happens. Well, they put a bug report, or their what's new is like bug fixes and performance improvements. That's where it comes from in a lot of these cases. They're not even fixing anything themselves. They just need to put out an update so that people see that it's been recently updated and maintained. That's obviously harder to do with like a GitHub repo. If you don't have changes to push, well, your GitHub repo is just going to sit there and look like it's stagnating, when in reality there just might not be anything that needs to be changed. So yeah, I mean, I fully admit I have this problem. I look for things to be current, when in fact that may actually be the exact opposite of what I should be looking for. In theory, finding something that hasn't changed in 2 years might very well be actually the best version of a thing, because it hasn't needed to change in 2 years. So yeah, anyway, I guess, I don't know, to put a period on this thing, my basic presumption is I think Ron's take is falling into a little bit too much of the Google kills everything narrative. And while Google kills everything, holy crap, is that ever common? But oh, Curvy, don't worry, he's about to leave. But
yes, I'm very hungry.
But yeah,
and my butt hurts.
Totally gonna clip that out of context. I'm totally hungry. My butt hurts. Yes. Anyway,
to be clear, it's because I've been sitting in this chair for 2 hours and haven't moved.
Yes, that's the reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this feeds a little too much into the like Google kills everything narrative, which, while true, it doesn't mean that everything is actually going to get killed. It just means that
you can
Assistant at this point can evolve to then include Bard as part of its feature set, or they can be merged together down the road. There's a whole lot of things here that do not necessarily equate to the death of Curvy, you evil person. So yeah, there's so much here where that doesn't need to be. Oh god, that title. Oh my god. Okay, Corbin, don't look. Anyway, the one thing, and I know that this is totally counter to what Austin said, but the one thing I do hope, please, I'm begging, rename Assistant if you integrate Bard. Because I don't think there's anyone out there who likes the name Google Assistant. I know that many people love it for whatever reason, but I want it to go away. I want something that just sounds better, that rolls off the tongue, not something that sounds so
really
awkward.
Yeah. I hope they call it like Gerald or something. Make it a word.
Bartholomew. Hey, Bartholomew. Oh God.
Barthany.
Huh?
Barthany.
Barthany. Oh God.
I think they should. All right.
All right. So I assume you're going to take off.
Yep, I'm leaving now.
Okay. Anything you want to say, pitch, prescribe the murder of?
No, I will say, I'll put this in the chat. I did this over the weekend. I'll for the past couple of years, I've had. Well, I don't know if it's a couple of years old. It's definitely at least 2 years old. I've had this web app called Image Share, which I made as a replacement for Nintendo's absolute dog shit web service for uploading a image from one of their consoles to the internet. Like, it was just a thing where you like logged into Twitter on your 3DS and then you'd share to it. It was really bad and slow and didn't work well. And also that's shut down now because of course that's gone from Nintendo now. And I was finally able to migrate this Docker, which I had not used in several years, and I did not enjoy it at the time. But now it's a cool little Docker container. Several Docker containers, I should say. And this is pretty cool because this is a thing you can use to take an image from a device and upload it to the cloud, and it gives you a QR code to scan to get that image on a phone or a tablet or whatever. And this works without any SSL because that's what I had to do, because most of the SSL certificate toolchain on the 3DS and Wii U are now expired. So if it's, I think really it's like Cloudflare's like premium SSL certs and like Google. That still works over HTTPS. Everything else doesn't really work anymore. But I made this cool little web app that lets you do that. So it works on, I made it mostly for the 3DS, but also works on literally any web browser, like almost any web browser ever this works with, because there's no JavaScript. It's entirely PHP. I haven't tried this new version, but I did try one version on Netscape 4 on my Power Mac, and it did work. Except it wasn't very useful because my Mac was saving screenshots in PIC format, which this doesn't know what to do with because no one uses that anymore. But it's a fun thing. I learned how Docker works again, and it still stresses me out, but I understand its usefulness.
Yeah, I get the usefulness. Still don't like using it, but I get the usefulness.
Because like I didn't want to use Docker or anything else for this, like because I had the first version of this first on Heroku's app hosting, and then I migrated it to DigitalOcean's app hosting, which was really great because I could just upload, like I had my whole app just PHP files in a GitHub repository, and when I hit push, it would automatically go to the hosted app provider and reload everything. I didn't have to touch a single terminal or manage any Linux server updates or anything. But all of those are like hardwired HTTPS. Like they don't let you, like I think Heroku, like you can maybe do, I tried looking around. It was hard to figure out what Heroku could do without paying for it first. It didn't seem like it really let you do what I needed, which was allow both HTTP and HTTPS, but don't force HTTPS. Mm-hmm. So I kind of had to do a custom server config for that. And at that point, I Docker seemed to be the most convenient thing. So
makes sense.
Yeah, so this is actually useful for a lot of stuff. I was trying it on like some older phones and stuff. Again, so if you ever need to like quickly get an image off of like an absolutely ancient device that can still connect to the internet, this works. And I'm gonna try to identify use cases like that and get people to try it, because it does cost me $7 a month to keep alive now. I'm sorry, $6 minus the domain. The domain's like a .com, so that's like $12 a year. That's fine. But this does need a VPS with a gig of RAM now because it's Docker.
Yeah.
And it was really funny. The server for this, I was just running like bare PHP because it was set up in a hurry when all those certs expired on the 3DS. And it was like idling at like basically nothing. Now it idles at 40% memory usage out of a gig.
Oh, Docker.
It is working. Like I was looking at it, and like when it was doing pretty well on Reddit for a little while, and I looked at those stats, and it was like doubling the amount of uploads, and it was barely changing. So hopefully that's fine. I don't need to upgrade this for the foreseeable future. But yeah, so that's a cool thing I made. And I linked to it in the chat so you can try it.
Yes.
You know what I should do? I should get my Lumia 550 back here and optimize it for that. I can be world's last Windows Phone developer.
I wish you luck with that.
Yeah.
I
mean, I think because like really, if I want like a good web app experience on there, I know this has to already work on there because it works on Netscape 4. So really, I just need to add the code for like the custom start menu tiles when you add it to the home screen, and it'll be great. But yeah,
I don't have words.
I think it's very fun to try to make a web app for ancient technology.
Speaking of, for those who missed it, somebody has decided to create a basically like in-browser usable version of basically every old version of Mac OS, like ever. I'm gonna be lazy and not look up exactly where to find this, but it shouldn't be hard to search for. It is ridiculous.
Yeah, that is very cool. And I was reading how they like ported the emulators, and of course all the code for the emulators was kind of a mess. So it was a lot of work, but yeah, very, very cool. You just, again, stuff you can do in a web browser you couldn't do like 5 years ago. But yeah, so I'm gonna go now. Goodbye, everyone.
All right, well, take it easy. Good chatting with you.
Bye.
All right. So, let's see. I only had one more topic prepared, and sadly, I don't even remember what I was going to say about it now. But, yeah. Anyway. I use PC EM to run Windows 95 on the PC. Oh, emulation, obviously. But, yeah. Can't say I've thought of too many reasons to still run 95, but yeah, I definitely used to use emulators all the time on my first MacBook Pro. Obviously I'd use them back in the Windows days too, but yeah, on the MacBook Pro there was a lot of software that I was still using for a long time that was very Windows, and yeah, I constantly had VMware open. Eventually, a lot of that stuff, either a Mac version came out, or I ported something, or stopped needing it. But yeah. Wine for Mac. I never really wanted to mess with setting that up. Somehow, an emulator just made more sense for a lot of the stuff I was doing. Also, this was quite a few years ago, so I don't think Wine for Mac even worked very well at all back then. Maybe it did. I don't know, but I didn't care enough to try. Oh, you run it for the 16-bit games? Okay. Okay. I get you. I don't do a whole lot of gaming in general, but in particular, I haven't really been toying with anything in the old 16-bit days. So, yeah, it hasn't really been a big thing for me. Anyway, let's see. So, if anyone has any specific, like, quick hit topics that you want to add to the list, go ahead. But, I'm going to jump on really quick this article. Somebody shared it. I apologize, I don't remember who, but someone shared this to the Discord. I believe it was end of last week. GM plans to phase out Apple CarPlay in EVs, electric vehicles, with Google's help. This title, first off, I'm calling out Joseph White on this one. Yo, dude, seriously, like, it's not just Apple CarPlay. I get it, that's better SEO, but for real, bud. Let's see. This also applies to Android Auto, in so much as that matters in this instance. Anyway, as you dig deeper, what effectively he's saying, without, if I remember, I think he avoids actually using the correct terminology anywhere in this article, but basically they're going to use what is unfortunately known as Google Built-in, formerly known as Android Automotive. This is different than Android Auto, of course. Android Auto was the thing where it mirrored your device. It wasn't even a true mirror, but it, like, your device produced an image. That image got fed to the screen of the car, and everything effectively was still running on your phone. Android Automotive, what they're going to be switching to, is an actual built-in Android device in the car that is going to produce a screen, and when you turn on the car, you don't have to connect your phone, you don't have to do anything. It just powers on a version of Android. It will live in the car, and you're done. This will house all of the same basic functions, navigation, music playback. You can install apps, etc., etc., etc. And Android Automotive, for those that don't know, also basically includes some ability to kind of run the Android Auto functions. So if you do connect a phone, for the most part, you can kind of just get that stuff anyway. I don't know how well or if you can really run Apple CarPlay stuff through Android Automotive. I've heard people make comments suggesting that there's some limited ability to do stuff like that, but I don't know if that's actually true. I would tend to think it's not. But hey, I don't know. Maybe I haven't used it, so maybe it is. Anyway, honestly, like, I've seen people criticize this. I've seen people really hype it up. My take on it is a straightforward, I feel like this is inevitable at this point. Android Auto was a reasonable idea. I think it was something that made sense. Austin, it's just as easy as Android Auto for the user. I would argue it's actually easier because, again, you don't have to connect your phone each time. That is, I mean, if you're getting into and out of your car several times in a short span, like you have to drive to a bunch of places that are all like a couple blocks apart, Android Auto sucks. Automotive would be infinitely better. But anyway, yeah, so my basic take on this is so many people will be happier with Android Automotive than they are with Auto. Austin, running CarPlay on top of Android Automotive. Okay, that's kind of what I figured. Like, There, you might be able to run it on top, but it's not like they're integrated or anything like that. Anyway, so I feel like this was inevitable, though. Nobody should be wanting to. No one, in practical terms, from just the pure experience sense, should want to be running Android Automotive or Apple CarPlay. You should want to run something that is built into the car. Now, for the issues with updates, bit of a different story. Naturally, a lot of we've complained about this on the RambleCast. Holy God, so many times it has been an issue where we have said, hey, we're nervous about updates. We don't like the idea of them shipping a car, for example, and 5 years into the car's life, they're like, you know what? Yeah, we're kind of done supporting that version. Tough luck. You're now on your own. I think most of us can agree that's not good for security, for features, for, just keeping a car kind of in the loop. Because if a car doesn't get abused or just doesn't get driven that much, it's going to have a long life beyond just 5 years. Believe me, I'm sitting here with a roughly 5-year-old Honda Accord, which, does, in all seriousness, and I'm not kidding, at about 5 years old, it's still at under 30,000 miles. I haven't had to drive it that much. And the time, granted, I've driven it from Oregon to California a couple of times for I.O. I've driven it to Portland several times. I've taken long drives with it, but not many. It has been kind of babied in terms of how many miles have been put on it. The thing is, if that had Android Automotive in it, frankly, by now, I would expect it to have been, maybe not by now, but I would expect not far from now, it would be abandoned. It would get the last update it's going to get, and it would just kind of live in this limbo state. And I would hate to see that happen for a car that is still very drivable, very good, in really good condition. So, it's that kind of a situation where we're still worried about updates. But that said, the experience for Android Automotive is just so much better. It's clearly better. In theory, should run faster, most of the time at least. It should look better. It should perform better. Just in general, it's going to be the nicer way to do things. Plus, obviously, a larger screen. Not that was ever a thing you couldn't have done with Android Auto, but they didn't do it. So, yeah. So, all that said, let's see. Curvy said, think Apple is building a replacement for CarPlay. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. At this stage, it does make sense to try to come up with something that you can put into a car and start sort of pushing the CarPlay experience out of the equation. But I don't know that we're going to get there yet, or quickly. Apple seems to be maybe running behind on this. Let's see. Curvy, funny, the BMX iX still has Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. Okay. Or, sorry, I read BMX. It's BMW. I have no idea why I read BMX there. Okay. Zooming in on the screen so I can actually read comments a little more easily. Which is a great time to do it, just shortly before the end. Let's see. Austin just wants seamless media playback with the phone. Yeah, that huge selling point. And that is one of my issues. So you say media playback, I'm going to say specifically podcasts. Because when I hop into my car, that's the thing. And podcasts have irritated me for ages for that exact reason, because I don't always want to connect the same phone to my car for like navigation purposes or whatever reason. Sometimes I connect a different phone, and that means that I can't keep playing a podcast. And in some instances, maybe other things. But yeah, I want seamless playback with podcasts. I want, if I hop out of my car and throw in earbuds to walk around a store or something, I want like the playback between my earbuds and then hopping in the car and getting back out and going back to earbuds. I want that to always be seamless. And yeah, that's something I don't know how good, if at all decent, you can do with the current version of Android Automotive, Google built-in, whatever we're going to call it. So yeah, I feel like they do need to still solve, in some sense of the word, they do still need to solve some of the use cases. But hey, you know, it's not out of the question. They do have some options, at least. Let's see. I'm trying to think if there was any other particular angle on this, and I'm kind of drawing a blank on it. Like I said, this one was kind of a quick one. Let's see. Was there something else? Oh, built-in is just the GM version of Android Automotive? Huh. Okay. I thought that was Google's actual rebrand, because it seemed like the automotive name was just vanishing entirely, and that they were using Google built-in as their thing. But hey, that works. Because I don't like either name. Automotive is too close to auto. Okay, Carson's saying built-in is the official name. Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought then. So, oh, damn it. What was I even about to say? I lost it. Anyway. Yeah, frankly, I still think both names are terrible. Automotive at least makes sense, but it's dumb because they already had auto, and it's just too confusing to people who don't know that difference. And for everybody else, like, to call it Google built-in, I'm sorry, but it's just, it sounds so weird. It's just not a good name. Seems they don't use the name a whole lot, which is for the best. But still, yeah. I mean, I get where it comes from. And I kind of get that they want their name to be in there. But I really, really desperately want it to be anything that is not built in. That name, yeah, Google built in. Plus, it's not even capitalized. I get it. They're really, really trying to make it about the company name, but I don't think it helps them. I really don't think that helps them. They should be trying something else with this branding. Austin, GM has quote-unquote Google built-in cars, but they don't have the Play Store, just Google Maps. Wonder if there's some reason behind that, or maybe that was a branding choice that was agreed upon before Google started using Google built-in as their new name for Android Automotive. That would kind of make some sense. Still, this is bad. Actually, out of curiosity, are you sure? Or okay, Austin, my curiosity on this is, you're mentioning the Play Store and Google Maps. What about Assistant? Does GM's version of built-in have Assistant, but it have Assistant and Maps, but does not have the Play Store? Because I have a suspicion that maybe they're branding. Okay, they definitely mention having apps. Okay, so that's Android Automotive without Google Automotive Services gas. See, the thing that makes me... What stood out to me, and the reason I ask about it, is this bit right here in the bullet points. Says, not all services, features, applications, or required compatible devices are available in all languages or countries, and may vary by car manufacturer and model. Okay, not that part. Then it says, for more details, visit the Help Center sites for... Help Center, sites for Google Assistant, Google Maps, Google Play, or the car manufacturer site. The fact that they specifically call out Assistant and Maps makes me think that maybe something about Play might not be a necessary part of this. The only thing is they do very clearly mention or show apps right up here, so I don't know. I don't know exactly what their aim is with that. Okay, well, I won't try to over speculate, but oh, this is, hold on, I want to look up something. You know, I don't know if it matters, but does anybody know if the Apple Music app works on Android Automotive? Oh, it doesn't. Okay, never mind. I can already see it doesn't. At least not according to this review here from Ron. Ron doing a review of a car infotainment system. That feels like something. Apple Music. Yeah, okay. So even many media apps you might want, like Audible, SiriusXM, Apple Music, Pandora, and SoundCloud, don't exist for Android Automotive yet. Okay. The only reason I noticed that, I was looking at this app list, and I noticed down here Apple or Amazon Music or Prime Music, whatever. I just kind of thought it was funny that they had an icon for that one in this list, but didn't have Apple Music. But it makes sense if Apple doesn't have music on Android Automotive yet. Austin, for the love of God, manufacturers, please do not do software. Couldn't agree more. They're bad at it. They are. I think pretty much all of us have, or everyone should be able to agree on this. Car manufacturers doing their own infotainment system. This is the reason why I was excited about Android Auto all the way back in the beginning. Because the infotainment systems for all the cars that I've ever had to rent, they've all been terrible. not only are they confusing to use, but they're just actually bad. So it's not that I ever really thought Android Auto was that spectacular, but it was just better by enough of a margin that it superseded anything I'd ever found before. And so, yeah, 100%. I don't ever want to go back to using what auto manufacturers would want to do. Carson asking about Tesla's UI. It's funny because I've heard so many people say such good things about Tesla's UI up until about 2 to 3 years ago. Then I started hearing some complaints, and lately I swear I hear nothing but complaints about Tesla's UI. Or, well, Tesla's infotainment system in general. Or Tesla in general. Like, the complaints about Tesla seem to be pretty minimal several years ago. And now it seems like I hear them all the time. And I'm sure there are reasons for this, but it was good except for continued playback on phone apps. Yeah, that makes sense. So, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I will say I really wish, and I know it won't happen, but I really would love to see Tesla kind of come to terms with the fact that people would probably still like to actually have Android Auto and Apple CarPlay apps playing in their car, and that would be best for everybody. Portrait screens are so much better than landscape ones. Not only will I agree with that, I'm actually going to complain about Cool Walk for a second. Let's see. So ever since I got Cool Walk, I have found it to be entirely obnoxious for one very, very definitive reason. Yeah, sure, we'll just use this image. So actually two reasons. One of them isn't really visible in this image, but I'll explain it easily enough. The first complaint I have, it is admittedly partially on my car for just having a poor design. My first complaint is the fact that the pause button is all the way over here on the far right side, and it's between two other buttons that are kind of close together. Not super close. I mean, this isn't terrible design or anything, but it's close enough that I find it irritating. I used to be really happy with having the media controls down here in the bottom left corner. It frankly just worked better. Even when they were in the center, which was the thing for a long time, it was kind of nice because you could still kind of rest your hand against the area below the screen and reliably touch the buttons. It's harder to do that right. You can switch maps to the right side? Really? I didn't know that. Okay, that I will look for that setting next time I think about it. Actually, can I do that right now? I assume I can. Let's see. Where is the... I assume it wouldn't be customized launcher. Let's see. Where would it be? Driver's seat location? Do I want to change that? Because I don't see anywhere else where you could switch sides. Yes to driver's seat location. Okay. I guess I must want to switch it to right. Because it should the car should be telling it its left side, presumably. Okay, so that'll fix one thing, because I hate reaching across for this. I get why maps would logically, like, if you're actively using them, I guess you might want to see those closer to you. But yeah, I don't at all like having to reach all the way over there to pause. And this problem wouldn't exist if I had play controls built into my steering wheel or somewhere else in the car. Unfortunately, that's not a thing that Honda was doing with my model, and as far as I'm aware, they just don't do this. Maybe they fix this in more recent years, but for at least my model and a couple of years after that, there were no play controls in the steering wheel. Or, well, you kind of had play controls, but not really. Austin, I do not have that option. That option is not on my screen at all. The bottom option for me is, well, of that group, the bottom option is driver seat location. So yeah, that sucks. I don't know that I ever toyed with taskbar widgets. I might want to mess with that sometime too. On regular small screen cars, Android Auto will show the current song playing on the bottom bar when using full screen maps, but on widescreen cars with full screen, it's only the pinned apps. But yeah, no, I do not have that option. Which, yet again, I ferociously hate the fact that Google rolls out features to such a small set of people, or limits who get certain features for so long. I actually railed against them way back in the Google Plus days, because YouTube had a big tendency to do this. But okay, multiple conversations. I might just have to toy around with this and see if I can get something to happen. But regardless, I do not have option, which is the key issue here. Anyway, so what was my other complaint about this while I was driving around? If I wanted to get back to just having maps as my primary view. Oh wait, no. I guess you can just hit the button for that. All right, never mind. That complaint goes away. But I noticed it just felt like a weird experience switching from switching from a primary view of an app into the Cool Walk interface. With the 3-panel split screen. Hitting the button to do that, it felt like there should have been a button to return to whatever you were previously on. And there isn't. It just goes away. You hit the button to enter this interface, and the button just disappears. And it feels like that should be a toggle. It's a small thing. And obviously you can get out of it. It just feels like they're doing it wrong if you can get into one view and can't get back out using presumably a button that would just logically exist in the same place. Also, looking at this view, I think my microphone was in the top right of the maps interface, not down at the bottom left where, I was blocking it, but yeah, I'm pretty sure, oops, I'm pretty sure on my car when I was driving just yesterday, I don't think the microphone was down here. I think it was up in this screenshot. It'd be right where it says Bethabara Road, like at the far right of the green block. That's, I think, where the microphone was. Anyway, yeah, they need to fix. I feel like they're not taking all of their interfaces into account very well. So yeah, there's, I mean, I like it, but I want them to fix their stuff. That's the key message here. And it seems like they're not doing it the way that they used to. Anyway, so I think that's about as much as I can drag out of this topic, especially since most of it's kind of a rehash of previous conversations. I'll leave the floor open on possible new topics for another minute or two. In the meantime, let me say, this weekend should be game streaming. The last weekend was kind of eaten up by review stuff. Oh, I guess briefly I'll just bring this up. Let's see, NordBuds 2 review. For anyone that somehow may not have noticed this, the review that I was working on was for the OnePlus NordBuds 2. They are, this is Google's super, or sorry, not Google, but OnePlus's budgety earbuds. They're pretty damn good. If you have kind of smaller ears, they're going to hurt like hell, so I don't recommend them for everybody. But yeah, they actually have pretty good sound. They now have some actual bass where the previous generation didn't. They sound good. Yeah, they're $60. They have active noise cancellation, though I would not recommend turning it on because it's just not that useful. I feel like ANC in general is not that useful. Maybe that's just me. But they have a lot of sound isolation, so it kind of doesn't matter. But yeah, so I don't know. They're good. Not necessarily what I would recommend to everybody, but yeah, they work. And I only got these on Thursday, effectively. Or wait, was it Thursday? Yeah. I got them on Thursday, I think it was, of last week. Damn, okay. I would look again, but I'm too lazy to pull up the widget. Yeah, anyway, so I got them very last minute. My review had to be rushed like no one's business in order to get it up on Tuesday. So yeah, that's pretty much why. That's the whole why of how there was no game stream this weekend. But should be back to it this coming weekend. Let's see. Awesome. Those definitely look like white labeled Chinese earbuds. I mean, strictly speaking, the only thing that the only word there that isn't technically right would be white labeled. I mean, they are just, I get what you're saying, and they are just cheap earbuds. And they happen to be white, and on a technicality, they are even labeled, if you want to say it that way. But yeah, they don't cost much, but they work. They work well. So that's about as much as I'm gonna say. Let's see. The case looks bulky. Yes, the case sucks. Honestly, like, and this was a problem with the first one too. The case, it's big, and there's no orientation where it's not a big case. You know, for comparison's sake, here are the OnePlus Buds Pro, the first generation. Now not sure how well that really shows up in camera. It's not a huge difference, but the OnePlus Buds Pro case is about 2/3, maybe 3/4 the height of the Nord Buds case. So the OnePlus Buds Pro, these fit in a pocket pretty smoothly. It's not perfect, like they could be thinner, but not by a lot. The Nord Buds, like this thing's a coffin. It's shaped like a freaking coffin. And so yeah, it's a thing. But they did improve one particular issue with the first generation. The first generation, same case height, like almost precisely, maybe like a fraction of a millimeter difference. But the original one has this sharp edge all around the top and all around the bottom. And so if you put these into like a pants pocket or something, not that I ever did this, but I'm just sure it would happen. If you ever stuck these into a pants pocket, like denim or whatever, these will wear like the pattern of the top of the case or the side or whatever right into your pants. They have to. There's no way they wouldn't. And it might take, a couple weeks or whatever for that to happen, but it should happen. And yeah, in the newer version, they fixed it. They made the edges rounder. So it may wear a bit of discoloration into denim, but it won't be bad. Like, it's not going to be the terrible level of discoloration that you would get with the sharp edges. Anyway, yeah, so that was... Oh, whoops, I completely forgot to switch back. There we go. Not that it mattered. I wasn't really going through a whole lot of other images. But yeah, anyway, what do you expect for $60? So yeah, this weekend should be gaming. Nothing too big of a change there. Let's see. Also, Carson dropped this in. I will let that load. As it does, I'm going to quickly say thanks to those who have been supporting the channel in various capacities. It's super helpful, and for anyone who would like to, check down in the description for links to Patreon, Cash App, and Streamlabs. That was the third one. Also, Carson, thank you for like 2 weeks ago or something. I would have thanked you then, but I did not see the notification until after the stream was over. And then you popped on for a quick gaming session, and I had forgotten to say anything then. So thank you, dude. Let's see. So Google issuing Chromebooks to employees as part of cost-cutting measures. That's just cruel. Let's see. Will this make Chrome OS better or worse? I mean, one would assume better, but I think if anything, it's just going to do nothing. Oh yeah, it could have been after the stream. I don't know. I don't know for sure. I just remember there was I didn't look at the emails, or I didn't see it until I looked at my emails, which I didn't do for like, I don't know, like it was the last thing that I did before going to bed or something. But yeah, it happens. Anyway, thanks, man. Let's see. So, is this a long? No, it's not. All right. Since I haven't read this, I'm just going to straight read it now on the air. Google is on an efficiency drive since layoffs at the start of the year, and is now looking to cut spending across employee laptops by defaulting to Chromebooks, office equipment, and other services. Really quick, I'm just going to say, I can only imagine them trying to do this for anyone who's doing Android development. If I was an Android developer at Google, or really working on anything that is not just straight web development, I swear I would find any way, any method, any option. I would just not use a Chromebook for that. Trying to do Android development on a Chromebook, I've heard nightmare stories. Everyone I've talked to who's tried doing it they've all said that it's not realistic. Anyway, according to CNBC today, Google is pausing refreshes for laptops, desktop PCs, and monitors, while also changing how often equipment is replaced. All right, that's fine. And from what I've heard, they had a pretty rapid refresh cycle, so that's for the best even. One result of this is that non-engineering Googlers, okay, will be given a Chromebook by default, with the report noting that MacBooks were previously in the range of offerings. So, okay, engineering developers, they're still gonna get MacBooks. That's what they should be getting, so cheers. As part of this, Google is highlighting the security upside of Chrome OS. Before this, mid-range to premium Chromebooks, and not lower-end models, were already offered, and that's presumably continuing. Another change sees a virtual workstation setup available in Linux or Windows called Cloud Top as becoming the default desktop offering. That sounds pretty dubious. Other office supplies with staples and tape cited today are seeing similar reductions. Yeah, I saw this conversation, and the only joke I could really think to make about it is this really sucks for whoever it is. For, every office has that person that steals office supplies. That person, they're very unhappy about this news. Let's see, Carson saying Android Studio runs pretty slow on the Pixelbook. Don't know how well it runs on newer Chromebooks with better specs. However, being able to build and deploy on the native Android container is kind of nice. Yeah, I can see that part being useful, but I feel like Android Studio is the big hang-up most of the time. Plus, and I know that this doesn't apply to everybody, this is a me thing, but if I'm doing Android development, I really, really prefer to push the app straight to device. So 9 times out of 10, I just have a device plugged in, and that's where I do my testing. Maybe not automated tests. Automated tests can go to emulator, but for actual like build and try stuff, I want it on a device. Let's see. Meanwhile, Google is going to be more efficient with other employee services after encountering oversupply, given it the hybrid shift from 5 days in office to 3. Yeah, that's wild, Cody. Which part? That I test on devices? So I do have to say too, why is Google one of the companies citing some of the highest profits of the year? Why are they acting like they're going to be skimping, like they're going to be checking under couch cushions for money? I don't get this. And also one of a very tech-focused company that I would tend to think also probably doesn't use a ton of paper. Why is it that they're bringing up specifically staples and tape? 2 items that are predominantly only used with paper. Why is it that's something that they're like, oh no, we're gonna save so much money by doing this. We can't afford the staples and tape. Really? Guys, I went to college in a time when paper was like the only way you handed in assignments, and even I don't remember using that much staples and tape. Hell, I avoided printing as much as I could. And we're now many, many years later. this does not make sense to me, even a little bit. Google leadership is not doing so well. Honestly, some part of me, and I know that this might sound a little ridiculous, or actually, take that back. I am desperately hoping it's ridiculous. But I'm really hoping that this whole thing about limiting office supplies, staples, and tape, I'm hoping that was like somebody said that as a joke and it got accidentally like copied into a press release or a statement or something like that. I'm hoping somebody was just making like a haha, yeah, we're gonna totally limit staples and tape for people. We're gonna put less of it in the office. I'm hoping that was like a gag, because any other explanation for this just looks so dumb. Austin, the last device I think I used to run test apps was a Nexus 7. I kind of don't get this. Well, why does anyone think it's weird that I want to build something and then test it on a device? Because to me, in part, I don't want to rely on using a mouse cursor to simulate what I'm going to do with touch. And also just in general, I feel like on a real screen, you can see what is this actually going to look like in terms of like the size of text, and are touch targets just going to look too close together or too far apart? On a computer screen, I see that, and if I'm seeing something on a computer screen, part of my thinking is I want stuff to mirror the information density and how close things are. I want it to mirror what's the other apps on the same computer screen. If it's on a phone, I'm going to see it in the perspective of here's what I'm going to be physically touching. And it's not like I can't see things on a device and make that same connection, but I feel like on a phone it's just more intuitive and more natural. Let's see, though that was also a lot, like if I'm building something and it, for whatever reason, it would have to go onto multiple devices at multiple sizes. Not that I do this, but or not that I have had to do this anytime recently, but in that scenario, yes, I would use an emulator because I wouldn't have the devices handy. But other than that, no, I'd rather just test it on a real device. Let's see. So, quote. Oh yeah, I saw this quote and it just read so bad for another couple of reasons. But yeah, somebody said, we've baked too many muffins on a Monday, seen G buses run with just one passenger, and offered yoga classes on a Friday afternoon when folks are more likely to be working from home. Okay. So first, we baked too many muffins on a Monday. I'm hoping that's not literal, because it sounds dumb. And part of me is hoping that's not like a weird colloquialism or like an attempt at a saying, because it also sounds dumb. The G buses thing, yeah, okay. Running them with one passenger, that sucks. Yeah, 100% you should probably figure out why that's happening and try to solve the core problem. Not have you don't want to shut down bus service, but you want there to be no reason for one person to be riding a bus at a time. And then the yoga classes on a Friday afternoon. First off, maybe that's already, like, even when they had full staff showing up, maybe that was already a bad idea. But to take it a step further, I feel like a lot of maybe I'm wrong, but how many people were doing yoga on site at Google? Could they not have... Do people not go to nearby gyms or something? I don't know. Something about this just sounds wrong. Anyway. Awesome. I think Android Wear switched me to emulators only, and I've never looked back. I will grant. Oh my god, Android Wear was infuriating to develop anything for on device. At first. I figured I got good at it after a little while. Once I wrote a connection script that just automated a lot of the process for me. Let's see. People literally live in the parking lot. Yeah, there's truth in that. Carson, I prefer emulators like 90% of the time. I would always test it on a physical device before finishing my work for the day, though. Yeah, okay. I mean, that's fair, and it depends on what you're doing too. In my opinion, if you're building functionality, yeah, an emulator works. Use an emulator. If you're building UI, put it on a fucking device. To me, this obviously, like, there are two differences here. If you're mostly working on UI stuff, I want to see it on the device. I don't want to see it on the emulator. Let's see. Awesome. Oh yeah, you actually remember the screenshot script. Yeah. For what it's worth, I have actually really wanted to go back and add some features to that script, because that script is really useful, but oh my god, it could be so much better. Not least of which is I actually want to add kind of a continuous mode, because right now it's just a one-line script. You run it, it does the thing, and then ends. I want to make it looping so that it can just sit there and I can just like hit return or hit it any one key and just pop another screenshot. I haven't done it yet. I've been lazy, but I should really do that, because it would be so useful for, honestly, almost every review that I write. I almost always have to do screenshots. You know what? There's actually a chance I might just do that tonight. Let's see. So, all this is part of a big multi-year efforts, okay, to save on costs that apply to the entire company. Google gave the following statement to CNBC, quote, "As we've publicly stated, we have a company goal to make durable savings through improved velocity and efficiency. As part of this, we're making some practical changes to help us remain responsible stewards of our resources while continuing to offer industry-leading perks, benefits, and amenities." So, legitimately, I'm calling BS on this. They might be... All of this could be true enough, but you know what I'm hearing? Honestly, like, if I'm a person looking at companies to apply to, what I'm hearing from all the news is, oh, Google has now decided that they're now going to have the people who count paper clips nagging us to do less, to use less. We're going to have the people, the literal bean counters, as it were. Like, we're going to have... so, if someone's telling me to use fewer paper clips, what happens to those perks? Are they going to offer perks that cost them, like, $20, $50, $100 a month? For, like, per person or whatever? Are they going to be offering those while at the same time telling you, oh yeah, no, you can't use as many paper clips, or no more staples for you. You've hit your staple quota for the month. I'm sorry, but I don't buy that at all. Companies don't do that. They don't go around saying, oh, hey, yeah, we're gonna give you we're going to give you this thing every month. We're just going to pay for it. Something that is a really nice perk that no other company can give you. And it's expensive. But you know what you're not allowed to do? You're not allowed to use your pencils really sharp. You have to actually use them until they're super dull, almost down to the wood. Then you can sharpen them again. Yeah, that's not how this works. To me, if they're making public statements about saving on tape, it means that they're cutting things people actually like. They're not saying it, but that's what they're doing. So, I'm sorry, but no, I just 1000% I don't buy this. To me, this just says you're making it worse for employees. Let's see. Carson, industry-leading perks. Just let us work fully remote. Okay, I want to come back to that, but I'm going to read these couple first. Also, Google. Hey, random Google Pay users, here's hundreds of dollars. Yeah, I saw that story. For anyone who doesn't know, for mysterious reasons, apparently they're quote-unquote dog-fooding a Google Pay remittance feature where I guess they're just randomly giving money to people who have used Google Pay for reasons. No idea why. Carson, reminds me of how teachers have to bring supplies like tissues and markers. Google telling employees to bring their own staples. Yeah, that's it's a little too on the nose. Kind of dead on, actually. You uninstalled Google Pay? Really? Can't say I would go that far, but I don't use it either. And it's not that I don't like using it. I actually like using it. It's that, in all seriousness, every time I use Google Pay, I don't get, and this, I know this sounds chintzy and cheap, but I don't get take a picture of your receipt surveys from Opinion Rewards. Yeah, I stopped getting those. So I went back to using just using my cards, and every store I go into and come out of, it asked me to take a picture of a receipt. Well, not every, but a lot of them. So, yeah, just in the last... You get those all the time? Exactly. There's no reason to use Google Pay if I can... It gets annoying how much you get them. I mean, it would, yeah. But that's also... I mean, I bought, damn it, what's the name of the video editor? I just totally blanked it. LumaFusion. I bought LumaFusion off of basically taking pictures of receipts. And, okay, that's not saying a ton, but I think it says something. Like, it's saving me money. You get them even when not making purchase. Yeah, I get them all the time when I walk into a store and come out without buying. But yeah, then I just, if you tap on the overflow menu and say I went in but didn't make a purchase, it still gives you like 2 to 3 cents. So yeah, almost every trip I end up having some store I went into just to look around or to check for something I wanted to buy there and couldn't find it, something like that. But anyway, Austin, you basically only use Google Pay and you get those too? See, not for me. Literally, I tested this. Not recently, I admit, but I've tested this in the past. If I go into a store and use Google Pay, I would never get a survey for it. If I don't use Google Pay, if I just pay with a credit card or theoretically cash, which I never do, I will get a survey question almost every time. Or, well, a receipt task. I should be saying receipt task, not survey. But anyway, let's see. Austin, I still can't link my bank account to Google Pay through Plaid. It's only linked to a credit card. Maybe that's it. But you don't need the Google Pay app to use Google Pay, you know, right? Yeah, I guess I knew that. I don't care because the app still has at least some functional value. Okay, so while I'm expecting there will probably be a response here, I want to quickly address Carson. You said earlier, industry-leading perks, lol, my company lets us work fully remote. About that. And I mentioned this once before, but I don't know that everybody has heard this. There's a reason why so many companies, all of a sudden, so many companies start pushing everyone to come back to work. It's because a lot of companies get a tax break from the city or state that they're in if they have people working in the office. Prior to the pandemic, this was mostly just it was mostly just a thing that was put into contracts, and no one ever expected it to be a problem. The pandemic hit, and obviously a bunch of people went home and worked from home. Anyway, a lot of cities and states have a policy in their thing. It's mostly cities, admittedly. They have deals with big companies, basically, that if you put your company or your offices somewhere major, where it's going to force a bunch of people to come to your office, they are going to, at like lunch breaks and before and after work, they're going to shop at local businesses like, you know, bakeries, delis, in any restaurants, possibly various other things, services, auto shops. The list could go on and on. The thing is, it is a big part of how they keep certain parts of cities active is to encourage companies to have a bunch of employees there. Anyway, after the pandemic and all these companies having people who are like, yeah, now that we've tried remote work, this is just infinitely better. We want to keep doing this. Companies obviously would have been happy to do this. Like, cutting the cost of paying for an office would be huge. But then the thing is, they still have to have an office for some of their employees. And the cities where their offices are stationed are suddenly in this position where they're saying, oh, you're not bringing in enough people. And during the pandemic, this was obviously a huge issue, but at a certain point, the law, there were laws put in place that basically said they had to put those sort of provisions on pause. Once those provisions came back into being active, the cities wanted those employees back. And so they basically were threatening companies with taxing them a bunch more unless they brought their employees back. And most of them have a policy of like, you have to have, I think it's something like you have to have 70% of your workforce in for 4 days a week or something like that. 3 or 4 days. I don't know. It's something like that. You have a solution. Just make them share desks. God, yeah. Anyway, this is why all these companies are pulling people back in. Obviously, some of them, yes, they actually genuinely believe that forcing a bunch of people to work in an office together is just better. And in some cases, look, I know it's not a popular, well, it is both a popular and unpopular opinion, but in some cases, that's actually very true. There are some people, some circumstances where having a bunch of people working together, either in the same room or sharing desks or whatever, it actually is better. Yes, in some cases. But in a lot of cases, it's not. It's been proven. But the thing is, all these companies are worried about losing their tax breaks, or in some cases are almost literally making money off of this. So they don't want to lose those free tax breaks, and as a result, they're they're screwing over their employees, forcing them to come in and work. Because, hey, the company doesn't have to pay for your gas to drive in, or mass transit, or whatever else. They don't have to pay if you they don't have to pay for your clothes. They don't have to pay for your lunch. I mean, some companies do, so that's a bit of a different story. But there's a whole lot of stuff they don't have to pay for that you do if you have to come in and work. And so you're the one who's basically taking on that cost. And it's also that they can make the city happy and they get their tax breaks. So, and honestly, like, the amount that they're getting in tax breaks absolutely dwarfs the amount that they might spend on so-called perks. So yeah, that's what this is in a lot of these cases. It sucks. It really, really sucks. Especially seeing as there are still tons and tons of people every month getting sick with COVID or RSV, or just in general, even like flu. I'm sorry, but it's so dumb making people who don't have to spend time in the office come in and live in an office. But it is what it is. Carson, I don't need Friday yoga classes. You say you don't need them. What I'm hearing is that you do yoga at your desk. This is why we need so many cars. Unhappy face. Yeah, it is. I mean, seriously. Now I need a car because I need to get to a grocery store from time to time, and I live out in the middle of nowhere. I know so many people. Like, I have friends in Portland. They live like in the city. They could hop mass transit and go places, but because they work in an office that's like all the way across the city and out in an opposite suburb or something like that, they have to drive there every day. They hate it. They hate their commutes. Obviously they could try moving, but that's not a good strategy to move your house closer to work, because then when you change jobs someday, hey, look at that, you just happen to change to the other side. Now you'd have to move again. Like, that stuff doesn't work. Yeah, in so many instances, honestly, people don't need as many cars, or wouldn't need as many cars if they could just work remotely more often. So yeah, this is just something that needs to be fixed. And as a side note, I'm now realizing it is 6:30. Holy crap. The final ramble topic ends up being this thing that has gone on for a while. But yeah, honestly, like, I think what should be happening, Google in particular, if Google were to act smart about this, and I'm just picking on Google here. I know other companies deserve to be picked on, but if we're going to just pick on Google for a second, I would say the smart move is officially shut down like a couple whole office buildings. Just, they have a bunch of buildings down in the Bay Area. Pick a few of those offices and just, that's it. Close them up. You're done. You don't need them anymore. Officially declare that a bunch of people can now just work remote. Period. They can and will work remote. Pick more people that can work remote. I can guarantee California, or rather the Bay Area, whatever cities that they have these deals with, I guarantee if you just simply say that you're going to keep a bunch of people in the offices, but it's going to be reasonable capacity for the offices that you have, I bet they'll still give you discounts. They'll still do some big tax breaks. They'll love it. And maybe pick the locations that are most suitable for the city. Try to make the city as happy as possible. Pick the offices to shut down based on which based on what the cities don't care as much about. That'd work wonders. And yeah, go ahead, keep having people come in, but try to work it so that people are coming in on split schedules. You could still keep buses running every day. You could still keep stuff active. But you don't have to fill the offices. Or you can arrange it so, honestly, a lot of people don't even need, this sounds bad, but a lot of people don't need desks for what they do. And to give an example, because I know that sounds like, oh my god, you're saying throw out the desks. No. I'm thinking of like, there are like the Google Developer Relations people who do videos. How many of those people could work at home 95% of the time that they're working, but come into the office to record video segments? There you go. Problem solved. They're done. Easy. You don't have to have those people come in the rest of the time. Or if they come in, honestly, how often could they just come in, go work in a conference room for, and when I say work in a conference room, let me also clarify that. I'm not talking about going in there with their laptops, just sitting down and quietly working. I'm talking about come in, do your meetings. You'll have a laptop with you. Do a presentation if you need to, whatever. But you do the stuff that involves actually being in an office with people, and then get the hell out of there. Don't come back for the rest of the week. Like, you're done. Your day is over. Or rather, your week in the office was solved with one day. This needs to become the norm. And they could cut down, I don't know how many jobs not jobs. I don't know how many desks and seats they could cut down on, but I would be shocked if Google couldn't cut like 30% of its buildings. Maybe 20%, whatever. They could probably cut whole buildings, and the savings there have got to be just astronomically better, and they would make people happier. Yeah, that's right. They were supposedly promising to open up some of the area to local businesses. I do remember hearing about that, and they had this whole thing about kind of migratory buildings or whatever that were basically just big, elaborate tents. And yeah, that all kind of disappeared with COVID. I have a feeling that probably was... part of me thinks that was either never going to happen or it was going to be a short-lived thing anyway. I could be wrong. I really don't know. But part of that just did not seem like it was a enduring strategy. But you never know. It's Google. And it's not like Apple hasn't had similar stuff going on. Apple's been talking up how they're saving money. Meanwhile, they're also demanding employees show up again at the office, which is really doubly funny to me because so many employees for so many years were complaining that the new Apple Park, like the big circle with all the secret everything, and they showed it off in all those big video keynote and product announcements. So many employees have like low-key admitted that they hate working there because they hate the building. Like, they actually think the building sucks. And the reasons, I've heard a few different reasons. A lot of them have to do with like the shape of rooms is annoying, and they don't like having to walk through some of the long hallways. They feel like that's wasteful, and that the whole thing is just in various ways kind of obnoxious, which I think is kind of funny because it really speaks to how much they over-engineered something and did it wrong. But now that they've spent it, obviously they're going to keep forcing people to go in. But people were already not wanting to go in there even before COVID. Then COVID came along, and there were a lot of them that, like, straight up admitted they were happy. Like, COVID was a great excuse to stop going into that office. And supposedly they've actually had people kind of saying that they were happy to quit Apple because they didn't want to keep going into that building. I'm kind of just thinking, like, what does that say? What does that tell? How telling is it that COVID basically was the breaking point, and it convinced a bunch of people that they shouldn't go back? And moreover, we're talking about Apple. They could have done this better. As in, they have the money. They can eat some more taxes from the city. They could endure putting up with like renegotiating a contract for the people that they have to have coming into the office. But no, they're joining everybody else in this farce where they're trying to hold everyone to task and making them come back in the office. The tech industry, I'm sorry, but the tech industry is looking dumb right now. It's not a good look for them. And I'd love to see somebody kind of get them back in line. But anyway, yeah, I think that about sums it up. I don't know that I have too much more I can really say on that, and I feel my throat is hitting its limits for how long it wants to keep talking. So really quick, I will acknowledge, I forgot to mention this before, or, well, I don't know about forgot, I just wasn't really thinking about it. Upcoming review or rather, some reviews that I'm working on. I know most of you guys don't care about this, but I'm just mentioning it anyway. I have a review coming up for a TerraMaster NAS. Just mentioning, I don't think anybody cares, but it's a thing. I'm also going to be reviewing the Insta360 Flow. Yes, it's a gimbal. It's a smartphone gimbal. Because, haven't reviewed a lot of those already. But this one is supposed to be the first one with AI. I'll tell you, that's kind of BS. So many of them have had minimal AI features, and this one's no different. But hey, it's the AI push. Everyone's got to talk about AI. Yes, this one will track you. A lot of the others have had tracking too. Like, pretty much all the other smartphone gimbals have some sort of tracking. Not all of them do it well, but this one seems to be maybe better than most. And so yeah, it seems like that'll be pretty good. And it has a few design features that I'm actually a big fan of. I haven't really used it yet, so I'll have more opinions about this later. But there are a few design choices that are super, super good compared to a lot of smartphone gimbals I've used in the past. I also have coming, I don't know if this is under embargo, so I can't say what it is. I guess it doesn't matter if I say I have another pair of earbuds coming. No one's going to know the company they're coming from, so there's no embargo element there I'm going to break. So I'm just saying I have some earbuds coming that look like they might be neat. But I don't know if they're under embargo. I don't think they are, but I don't want to risk it. Anyway, so yeah, that's what I'm working on. I'm also trying to get, you know what, I probably shouldn't talk about this, but there's no secret here. It's just, this is driving me nuts. There's a company, some people may have heard of it, called Beast Grip. I'm asking them for a review unit of their main product, which is it. If you've ever heard of a camera cage, a camera cage is basically it's usually a metal contraption that fits around a camera. It doesn't really like lock off the camera so much, but you mount it to a couple of points on the camera, and what it's for is it adds a bunch of mounting points, all kinds of mounting points around the camera. This way you can add like big grips to the side, you can add rail systems, you can put there are tons of 1/4-20 screw mounts, you can put on cold shoe mounts anywhere. Like, the whole point is you just make your camera suddenly this accessory beast. You can build whole video rigs onto a camera using a camera cage. Anyway, they make one for a phone. I asked for a review unit. They're pushing really hard for us to do like a profile on their CEO, and they haven't. I've gone multiple rounds with them kind of asking like, okay, we can talk about this, but I also need to ask about a review unit, and they keep dodging that. And so I thought I was going to be reviewing it. Now I'm pretty sure I'm not. The joys of being a product reviewer. Anyway, so yeah, that's a thing. Anyway, so that's kind of what I've been working on. I'm sure everyone's super interested in that stuff. Anyway, so with that, thank you everyone for coming by, hanging out, and being part of the conversation. You kept me talking certainly past what I thought was going to be today's endpoint. Seriously, we came in with 5 topics, and 2 of them should not have lasted more than a few minutes. Somehow, here we are at almost 7 o'clock. Anyway, so it's been awesome having you guys here. Again, should be game streaming this weekend. And yeah, all the rest of it is pretty much the normal stuff. So with that, again, thanks all for coming by, and I will see you next time. Good night, everybody.